And we are live for week 10 Sunday morning. How we doing, everyone? We are on Germany time this morning. Got a game kicking off in about 25 minutes. A banger of a football game. A little bit different than the banger of the football game we got Thursday night, but a banger nonetheless. We got the Giants facing off versus the Carolina Panthers in Germany in just about 25 minutes. There are some must starts in this game. I think some pretty difficult start-sit decisions for some people in this spot. I see a question in the TikTok live, Tracy or Debo in the flex. I think I would probably lean Tracy there. I think you need to start Tyrone Tracy, guys, versus the Panthers. He really is a must-start running back here in week 10. The Giants are 6.5-point favorites in this game, which feels like a lot for the New York Football Giants, but they're playing the Panthers. And the Panthers have been one of the worst teams in the NFL this season. They have arguably the least talented defense in the NFL. I mean, they lost multiple of their best defenders. They were already a bad defense before that. The Panthers are allowing the second most rushing yards per game to running backs, 142 yards per game. They're allowing the most touchdowns per game to running backs, 1.5 touchdowns per game allowed this season. I mean, we just saw Kamara have 155 rushing yards, 60 receiving yards, and 6 catches last week. Didn't score a touchdown. Kamara was the running back 3 last week. Obviously, Tracy not quite to the role that Alvin Kamara is in, but the role for Tracy's quite good, and there's no reason to expect it to change much in this game. He had a 51% rush share last week, 80% rush share the week before that. His rush share is going to be between 50 and 80% in this game. That likely means at least 15 carries versus the Panthers. Good chance at a touchdown for Tracy. So we're starting Tyrone Tracy. In most situations, I think you're going to want Tyrone Tracy in the starting lineup. Obviously, Malik Neighbors is a must start. We really don't have to talk too much about that, but it's to give you a sense of how good Tracy is. Tracy actually projects for more fantasy points than Malik Neighbors right now. In the touchdowns have a big part in this. I don't feel strongly. I would play Tracy over Neighbors. Both are must starts. Neighbors projects as a top 3 wide receiver in the Walter Picks app this week. How we doing, everyone? It is week 10. We are on Germany time this morning, as we always do when we have the early international games. I'm going to talk through that game for the most part in the first 25, 30 minutes of the live. Before that game starts, I'm going to try to get to as many of the Giants-Panthers start-sits as I can. I do think Daniel Jones is a start this week. I would start Daniel Jones over a bunch of quarterbacks. I'm not going to start him over Josh Allen, Brock Purdy, Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts. I'm not going to start him over Sam Darnold, I don't think, versus the Jags. I might start him over Tua. I think that one's pretty close. I would start him over basically everybody else. I'm starting Daniel Jones over Mahomes. I'm starting Daniel Jones. Let me go to the QBs here. I'll go to the QB ranks here on the TikTok live. Go to the QB ranks on the YouTube live. Shout out to everybody in both lives right now. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button if you're watching live on YouTube. If you're watching live on TikTok, guys, smash the follow button. So yeah, I'm playing Tua, I think, over Daniel Jones, but that one's close. But I'm playing Jones over Mahomes, over Stafford, over Murray, over Baker, over Kirk, over Aaron Rodgers, over Stroud, over Russ, over Nix, over May, over Caleb Williams, over Goff, over Herbert. I'm playing Daniel Jones over all of these guys. And the real reason here, guys, the floor is actually pretty good for Daniel Jones. It feels weird to say. I know he's a gross guy to try out there in the starting lineup. Daniel Jones, though, he's coming off his best fantasy game of the season, had 24.4 points last week, was QB4 last week. Now he gets the Panthers. And the Panthers have had a pretty good floor for quarterbacks this season. We saw Mariota and Jaden Daniels. They combined over 24 points. Bo Nix 2 weeks ago had 30 points. Derek Carr had 14 last week. I mean, the floor really for Daniel Jones in this game is 14 points. He's got a very good chance at a rushing touchdown and some rushing production in this game. So, yeah, I'm playing Daniel Jones over basically every quarterback other than Tua, Darnold, Hurts, Jaden Daniels, Purdy, and Allen. That's how I'm approaching the Daniel Jones situation here. I do think the Giants offense has success in this game. The Panthers defense, again, probably the least talented defense in the NFL. And there's a lot of injuries across the defenses in the NFL right now. I still think the Panthers probably the least talented. Theo Johnson, he's an interesting sleeper in this game. He's starting to heat up a little bit. Had his best fantasy game of the season last week as well. 3 catches, 51 yards, and a touchdown. He's been playing almost every single snap. Had a career-high 23% target share last week. And you guessed it, not like the Panthers are a very scary defense for tight ends either. They're allowing the 3rd most yards per game to tight ends, the most touchdowns per game to tight ends. They rank bottom 10 in receptions allowed to tight ends as well. Theo Johnson, definitely an interesting deep sleeper. I would play Tracy over basically everyone, guys. I'm playing Tracy over Debo. I'm playing Tracy over Brian Thomas Jr. I'm playing Tracy versus Puka. I think I would go Tracy. Tracy has an extremely high floor in this game. He's going to get over half the carries for the Giants. The Panthers ranked dead last in basically every single running back ranking. All right, that's the Giants side of the ball. So a lot of guys I think you really need to be starting for the Giants. I think you need to start Tyrone Tracy. I think you need to start Malik Neighbors. I think you want to start Daniel Jones in a lot of different situations. Wan'Dale Robinson, he's a floor option. I'm a known Wan'Dale hater. Talk about it most live streams. He's been under 10 points or fewer in 4 straight games, but he does have still a good floor. The target share has been consistent. No games under a 13.5% target share for Wan'Dale. No reason to expect that to change. There's no Darius Slayton in this game. That should mean more targets to Neighbors and Wan'Dale and Theo Johnson in this game. Jalen Hyatt probably still putting up a donut. Definitely can't be trusted at all. Need to pick up a flex. Jennings versus Keenan. Yeah, Juwan Jennings, I think, a slightly better option than Keenan this week. Definitely feel okay about Juwan Jennings. On the Panther side of the ball, so we're going to see Bryce Young again. Bryce Young coming off a comeback win versus the Saints. And then the Saints fire their coach. Could Bryce Young start a little trend here where he starts, just eliminating NFL coaches? I think if the Giants lose this one, Brian Daboll could get fired. It's possible. They're 6.5-point favorites. The only guy you feel really good starting for fantasy on the Panthers is Chuba Hubbard. Unfortunately, no Jonathan Brooks again this week. We're not going to see Jonathan Brooks until week 12, if we even see him. I'm definitely a little disappointed fantasy-wise with the run out for Jonathan Brooks. I mean, he might not play this season. He's probably going to play in week 12. My mindset from the beginning with Jonathan Brooks was I'm not expecting anything until the fantasy playoffs anyway, but I did think he would play sooner than this. So this is not the ideal outcome for Jonathan Brooks. Hopefully we see him in week 12. We're not going to see him this week, and that means a lot of Chuba Hubbard in a pretty good matchup versus the Giants. I mean, Chuba Hubbard's been pretty consistent this season. He ranks top 20 in fantasy points per game, top 15 in rushing yards per game. I mean, his usage has been great, top 10 in snaps, snap percentage. His target share ranks in the top 25. His rush attempts rank in the top 20. I mean, he's had one of the better roles, one of the more consistent roles in the NFL. This offense really flows through the running backs. And the Giants rank bottom 12 versus running backs this season. So Chuba Hubbard, a pretty good option. None of these other guys I really want to start. I would go Leggett over Coker. We go to the wide receiver ranks, seeing people ask for those. Hop over to the wide receiver rankings on the YouTube live too. Then we'll get to the start sit questions with a priority towards the Germany game. We are on Germany time this morning. Shout out to everybody in this live stream. We got a great week 10 coming on our TV screens in just a few minutes, really. But some great games after this Germany game as well. But an absolute banger of a football game between the Panthers and the Giants coming up. And this is one of those games. I say this on some of the Thursday lives every season. If you have even a single reason to root for this game, you're not a fan of the team, whether that be fantasy or props, we probably would be friends. If you have some rooting interest in this game, this Giants-Panthers game at 9:30 a.m., we probably would be friends. And I definitely have a huge interest in Tyrone Tracy today. I'll hop to this actually quick before I get to the start sits, because I always have one free player prop for these early games. I'm going with the Tyrone Tracy line here, over 71.5 rushing yards. I've seen it as high as 73.5. I would take this up to 75.5. I think Tracy has a good shot at over 100 rushing yards in this game versus the Panthers. I think he's getting at least 15 carries in this game. I don't agree with the 6.5 point spread for the Giants. I would definitely take the Panthers with the point there, but I do think the Giants win this game, and a lot of it is through Tyrone Tracy. I also like Taysom Hill's receiving yards over and Tajay Spears receiving yards over. We'll get to that a bit later in the live stream, but the free player prop for Germany time is Tyrone Tracy rushing yards versus the Panthers. This line really could have been in the 80s. I think Tracy has, at least a 50-yard rushing floor in this game and 100-plus rushing yard ceiling. He had 66 rushing yards last week out versus the Commanders. Much more difficult matchup here versus the Panthers. He had 145 rushing yards versus the Steelers just a couple of weeks ago. He got hurt in that game, didn't end up missing any time. But yeah, I like the Tracy line. We're streaming Daniel Jones. Yep, he's definitely a streamer this week for sure. I got him ranked as QB 7. Not very many QBs I'm starting over Daniel Jones. Debo or Taysom, yeah, I'd go Debo there. A.J. Brown, I'd probably play over Pickens still. All right, let's get to some of these start sits here. Try to prioritize the London time game. Tracy or Nico and PPR. Yeah, that's a really tough call. You want to start Nico. Nico projects top 5 with only 24% target share projection, but I still think it's probably Tracy here versus the Panthers. The floor is just so high for Tracy This is not updated yet. But I do think you got to go Tracy over Nico. Daniel Jones or Stafford, I'm going Daniel Jones. I'm going Daniel Jones there. It feels gross. Stafford's been cooking a bit, but I do think it makes sense to go Daniel Jones over Matthew Stafford. I expect this game to be a little closer than the 6.5 point spread. I do think the Giants win. I do think Tyrone Tracy and Malik Neighbors play very well. Pickens anytime TD, don't hate it. I do not think Amari Cooper's playing this week. Yeah, so let's talk about the injuries real quick, because I know these early window games, tough call with the injuries. There's some really difficult start-sit decisions, both in this Germany time game, but also later in the early window games coming up in like 3.5, 4 hours. Tyreek Hill is a true game time decision on Monday night. Amari Cooper is a true question mark right now. I don't think Amari's playing. I'm like 50-50 with Tyreek Hill, which puts it in a really difficult fantasy decision. Start London or wait on Nico. Yeah, so Nico Collins, Amari Cooper, and Tyreek Hill. They are all true question marks. It would not be that crazy for them not to play. I am most confident of those three that Nico is going to play. I do feel more confident in Nico playing. There was an early report that he was going to play, and then they walked that back a little bit. I also think I lean towards Tyreek playing, but again, it's close to 50-50. So if you are confident in your fantasy matchup, you might have to sub out Tyreek Hill. I'm thinking about Tajay Spears over Tyreek Hill in one of my leagues where I got a lot of bye weeks. I mean, rough spot for the people with Tyreek Hill. And then Amari Cooper, I feel least confident about. He's dealing with a wrist injury. He didn't play last week. And they activated 2 wide receivers off the practice squad yesterday, which to me is a signal that Amari Cooper's not playing. I really don't think Amari Cooper's going to play. I put it at like 25, 30% chance Amari ends up being active. That's my gut feeling about the Amari situation. So that's how you should approach these more difficult decisions. We are on Munich time this morning, Germany time this morning, an absolute banger of a football game kicking off in about 15 minutes between the Giants and the Panthers. I guarantee you later in his live stream, we will see people who were not on Germany time with us asking start-sits about Chuba Hubbard, about Jalen Coker, about Xavier Legette, about Daniel Jones. We're going to see it. We're going to see the people that were not on Germany time like us ready for the week to get going. All right, London and Jason for Neighbors. Yeah, I would do that. I think I prefer Neighbors over those guys. If BTJ out, Davis over Jennings. I don't think Brian Thomas Jr. is going to be out. It sounds like he's likely to play. I think that was already reported. So I would go BTJ there. I do have a DraftKings lineup. Jarrett Force, I can pull that up. Taysom, Legette, Douglas, or Ridley PPR. Yeah, so last week was National Taysom Day. I hope you guys all celebrated on National Taysom Day with the Taysom Hill touchdown. I'm going back with another Taysom prop this week. I'm not going to call it National Taysom Day this week just because it's a more obvious Taysom week than last week now that we saw the roll. But guys, the Saints might have the worst wide receiver depth chart that I've ever seen. I think it might be the worst wide receiver depth chart that I've actually ever seen. And I have seen some bad wide receiver depth charts. I mean, we're about to see Jalen Coker and Xavier Legette and David Moore out there. I think all three of those guys would probably be starting for the Saints. Mason Tipton is their top receiver this week. Then it goes Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Equanimeous St. Brown. There's a couple other guys you've never heard of that are not on this list. Here I'm showing on the YouTube Live. By the way, we're live on TikTok and YouTube. Come to the YouTube Live. It is a better viewing experience. If you're looking at the rankings, by the way, I'll pull up the wide receiver ranks on the YouTube Live as well. These rankings are for the rest of this week. So you're not going to see any Ravens or Bengals on these rankings. You're not going to see guys that I have projected out on these rankings, guys like Amari Cooper. I do want to start Nico. I do think Nico probably plays. Yeah. But yeah, I'm going Taysom Hill, I think, over Legette. I think I'd go Taysom Hill over Douglas too. I think there's a pretty high ceiling for Taysom in this game. The last time Taysom played the Falcons, he scored twice. It was his second best, I think, fantasy game of the season after last week. 16 points for Taysom last week. 14.4 in week 4. He had 4 catches for 41 yards, and he had 5 carries. Five targets, 5 carries, 18% target share for Taysom. The Falcons have not been good versus tight ends this season. They have not been great versus running backs, about average. So yeah, I feel pretty good about Taysom this week. Let me go to the running back ranks here on both live streams, and we'll get to the tight ends next. Tracy, DJ Moore, D-Hop Waddle, pick 2. Matt, we are on Germany time this morning, so we can sweat out decisions exactly like this. And you got to start Tracy. Put Tracy in. In almost all situations, I think you kind of have to start him. This is the best possible matchup for him. He's going to get at least 15 carries. The Giants are 6.5-point favorites. I mean, everything we've seen from Tracy, everything we've seen from the Panthers' run defense, I really don't know how you don't start Tracy. I think he just really needs to be started unless you have, Jonathan Taylor, Bijan, Mixon, Kyrie. Like, you have 3 very good running backs. I know some people are in some interesting spots, like Tyrone Tracy versus McCaffrey, for example. I think it's a super tough choice. I think I would lean Tracy there. Everything in my body says you got to start Christian McCaffrey if he's playing. There's sort of an unwritten rule in fantasy about that. But Tracy has the better matchup, and I think just a safer known role. Tracy versus Aaron Jones, I think I lean Tracy there too. Tracy versus Breece Hall, I think that's pretty close. I wouldn't knock you for going Breece in a PPR league. I think it's close, but I personally would lean Tracy there too. Bucky or Ray Davis help? Yeah, I'd probably go Bucky over Ray Davis. The Bears, the Bills are big favorites this week too. We'll get to that game coming up here in about 10 minutes once this Germany time game kicks off. Is Tracy the goal line back? No. He at best is splitting the goal line back role. Singletary definitely could come in Vulture, but I still think Tracy has got a good chance at a touchdown regardless. Last 2 weeks doesn't look like any touches actually for Singletary in the red zone. Let's pull this up here for Tracy as well. Yeah, Tracy actually has been getting the red zone work over Singletary over the last couple of weeks, at least. I still think that he's not locked in as the goal line back. He's probably going to get at least half those opportunities though. Goddard or Laporta, Tracy is the goal line back. He has been the goal line back. He is their number 1 running back, pretty clearly. Again, I'm pretty confident in saying he's going to get at least 15 carries in this game. He's the free player prop on Germany time this morning, over 72.5 rushing yards. And I would be pretty excited, to be honest, to watch Bryce Young just continue this streak of terminating NFL coaches. I think Brian Daboll could get terminated if they lose this game in Germany. They're 6.5-point favorites. They're playing the worst defense in the NFL. I think Malik Neighbors and Tracy will have very, very good games here, though. Samster, start 1 at flex. Taysom, Addison, Pearsall, or Mike Williams. Yeah, so this one, to me, it's between Taysom and Pearsall. I think Pearsall, Juwan Jennings, very interesting plays this week. Very interesting plays. It's hard to know exactly how the target shares are going to shake out for the 49ers with Debo healthy, Kittle healthy, CMC healthy, Juwan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall all healthy. No Brandon Ayuk. Obviously, he's out for the season. That should bode well for Kittle and Debo and CMC, and it's going to bode well for at least one of Jennings or Pearsall too. So yeah, I think Pearsall's an interesting sleeper. I'd probably just go Taysom. Taysom's got a great chance at a touchdown again this week. He had 2 last time versus the Falcons, and they have no receivers. Let me run through it again really quickly. I'll pull this up because I know I didn't have all the players here when I was showing it before. But listen to the receivers, guys, for the Saints. Listen to these receivers. We got Cedric Wilson. I think, is he out? He might be out too. Cedric Wilson out. Let me go through this again. Yeah, he is. Cedric Wilson's out. He was like their most talented receiver left. Mason Tipton is their top receiver. They got Marquez Valdez-Scantling off the street a few weeks ago. Kevin Austin Jr., who you've never heard of. Dante Pettis, who hasn't played in a game in years. Jermaine Jackson, too. He's going to be one of their receivers running routes today for the Saints. Jermaine Jackson and Kevin Austin Jr. running behind Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Mason Tipton. This is the Saints receivers today. So Taysom's a good option. I mean, just because of that, you got to expect Taysom to have at least the role we saw Taysom have last week. TJ Hawkinson or Ladd McConkey, I'd probably go Ladd there. I do think Nico's playing. I don't think Amari's playing. And I think it's a 50-50 call with Tyreek Hill. Would you start Brian Thomas Jr. this week? I would. I would start Brian Thomas Jr. this week, yeah. Juwan Jennings or D-Hop. I'd probably go D-Hop over Jennings. Baker or Daniel Jones. My league is 6 points for every type of touchdown, even passing, and I can get a flex. Streamers, I have doubles starting as of right now. Yeah, I would probably go Daniel Jones over Baker this week, personally. I think Daniel Jones is in a good spot here. I would go Tyrone over Chuba Hubbard. Yep, I think Tyrone Tracy is just in the better matchup. He's the better player in the better matchup. Chuba's been great. I think he's got a high floor as well. I think the ceiling, though, is definitely higher for Tracy. The Giants are favored by 6.5 points in this game. I would play Tracy over Aaron Jones. I'm not sure I'd go Tracy over Jonathan Taylor, though, versus the Bills. I don't think that would be worth it. Yeah, I think I would go Daniel Jones over Baker. Nico or Wan'Dale, I don't know if it's worth the risk to start Nico. Yeah, it's a tough call. Really tough call here. I personally think in this spot, it's worth it. I think it's worth it to take the risk here and bench Wan'Dale. I mean, Nico's just, his ceiling is so much higher. Go maybe add one of the depth pieces, John Mechie or something behind Nico in case he sits, and then you at least have something. Like, is John Mechie that much worse than Wan'Dale? He's definitely worse. Has a much lower floor. But, I mean, it's not that crazy to think if Nico's out, John Mechie or Xavier Hutchinson could potentially outscore Wan'Dale. It's definitely not out of the cards. And then if Nico starts, he's a top 5 option. I mean, if he's playing, he has to be started in this game versus the Lions. This game's projected to be extremely high scoring. Otton, Kittle, Kittle needs to be started over all tight ends. This week, he's got a great matchup versus the Bucs. Help Wan'Dale or Taysom? Yeah, it's Taysom. It's Taysom over Wan'Dale. Taysom's got a way higher ceiling than Wan'Dale. He's got a chance at multiple touchdowns. I don't think Wan'Dale has a chance at multiple touchdowns. Josh Downs versus Nico. This is where it gets really close. I think you go Downs here. I mean, Downs is a really good option this week. There's no Michael Pittman Jr. There's no Anthony Richardson. I mean, Downs should have a good shot to get over 30% of the targets this week. Is Tyreek playing? He is a true question mark. Tyreek Hill is a true 50-50 question mark. Really tough for fantasy decisions. Extremely difficult. Pull up the tight end ranks here. Theo Johnson, seeing a Theo Johnson question on Germany time. Over 2.5 receptions. Your thoughts? Yeah, I like it. I do. I like the Tracy line the most rushing yards. But I think Theo Johnson's a pretty good sleeper, honestly, in this game. We got him ranked as a top 20 tight end this week. I think he'll probably outperform this ranking, to be honest. I got him down at number 18 in tier 6, right around Zach Ertz. He's coming off his best game of the season, 3 catches, 51 yards. Back-to-back games with 3 catches for Theo. He's been at least 3 catches in 4 of his last 5 games. He's playing over 80% of the snaps every single week. He actually played the 5th most snaps among tight ends in the NFL this season. Extremely athletic tight end who had a career high, season high, 23% target share last week. I feel pretty good about Theo Johnson. No Darius Slayton. Theo Johnson can make big plays. I like his yards and interceptions. Don't hit that at all. Juwan or D-Hop? Yeah, I think I lean D-Hop. I do think Nico plays, but he is a game time decision. I'm playing Tua over Stafford. I think there's a better chance for the Dolphins to lean pass heavy than the Rams. The Rams are getting some of their offensive line back. Stafford's definitely an option. I prefer Tua, though. I think there's definitely a path where the Rams just run a lot on Monday night behind Kyron Williams in a healthier offensive line than we've seen most of this season. Germany time. Jones, Nick Herbert. Yeah, this one's Daniel Jones. Start Daniel Jones, guys. In most spots, I think you start Daniel Jones. Let me go back to the QB ranks here. Switch back to the QB ranks. Go back to the QB ranks here on the YouTube Live as well. I think you start Daniel Jones unless you have Josh Allen, Brock Purdy, Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts, Sam Darnold, or Tua. Then it's Daniel Jones. And I think it's close between Daniel Jones and Mahomes and Stafford and Kyler. I get it. I feel, the grossness of starting Daniel Jones over Mahomes and Stafford and Kyler Murray and even Baker Mayfield and Kirk Cousins. I get it, but you got to start Daniel Jones versus the Panthers, I still think, over these guys. The floor is at least 15 points. Almost every QB we've seen do that versus the Panthers. We saw Bo Nix drop 30 points 2 weeks ago versus the Panthers. Daniel Jones has some rushing touchdown upside in this game for sure. The matchups, the Panthers are allowing the 5th most, 6th most points per game to quarterbacks this season. They're allowing the 3rd most touchdowns per game to quarterbacks this season. Every single quarterback's thrown at least 1 touchdown versus the Panthers. And we've seen some rushing touchdowns. Bo Nix scored the first rushing touchdown versus the Panthers last week. They really haven't played very many rushing QBs. And in the one rushing QB they've really played, I guess 2, Jaden Daniels ended up getting hurt in that game, so he didn't play much. He did have 50 rushing yards before Jaden Daniels got hurt in that game. He had 3 carries for 50 yards, Jaden Daniels, before he got hurt versus the Giants. And then Mariota came in and scored 20 points. And then Bo Nix scored 30 the week after that. Those are the most rushing QBs they played. That's basically it. It's a combo of Daniels, Mariota, and Nix. I mean, Daniel Jones is very comparable, I feel like, to Bo Nix in this matchup versus the Panthers. Tazi, how we doing? Good morning. I'm doing fantastic. We're on Germany time this morning. We got a banger of a football game on in a few minutes between the Panthers and the Giants. I live for these games, man. I got a lot riding on Tyrone Tracy this week. Feel good about him. I'm taking his prop over 73.5 rushing yards, I think it's up to. Feel pretty good about the Theo Johnson lines as well. Germany time, pick 2, Neighbors, Hopkins, Brian Thomas Jr. Yes, so you're starting Neighbors. I mean, there should be no Neighbors questions. You got to start Malik Neighbors. He's a top 3 wide receiver option versus the Panthers. I mean, he could get 15 targets in this game, and it just wouldn't be that surprising. It wouldn't be that crazy. Guys, Malik Neighbors, I think he leads the NFL in target share this season. Let me go to this real quick. He's second in the NFL in receptions per game. Yeah, he leads the NFL in target share. Guys, Malik Neighbors has a 37.2% target share this season. I mean, that is insane. I don't think we've ever seen a rookie lead the NFL in target share before. And this is exactly why we liked him in the lead up to the season, in draft season. There was a chance he could eclipse a 30% target share. And it was obvious because of the receivers they had. I mean, he's running routes next to Wan'Dale Robinson and Jalen Hyatt and Darius Slayton. He has not been under a 30% target share all but 2 games. He's been under a 29% target share once this season. I mean, you got to be starting Neighbors. And then Hopkins versus Brian Thomas Jr., I think that one's pretty close. It's a floor ceiling decision, I think, there. I probably lean towards Hopkins with how he played last week. The matchup's not as good as Brian Thomas Jr. has. Mac Jones starting, though, that's definitely a big question mark for the whole Jags offense. Mac and Cheese Mac Jones is back this week. Good morning, Justin. Good morning, everyone. We are on Germany time this morning. This game's about to kick off between the Giants and the Panthers. Is Collins playing? Yeah, so the injuries, there's a lot of injuries to stay on top of this week. There's 3 big ones, really. It's Nico Collins, Amari Cooper, and Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill, a true 50-50 question mark. Running back rankings, please. Yeah, I got you. I'll go to the running back ranks on both lives. We're live on TikTok and YouTube, by the way. If you're watching live on TikTok, guys, come to the YouTube live. I'm telling you, it's a better viewing experience. Link is right in the TikTok bio. I've seen some questions about my DraftKings lineup. I'll get that up on the screen coming up here momentarily, and then we'll go game by game once this game kicks off into the next window of games. We're on Germany time, Munich time this morning with the Giants and the Panthers. Good morning to all of you on Germany time with me. Wan'Dale, Leggett, Mostert, Eckler, pick 2. Yeah, Wan'Dale's in play with this one. I'd probably go Eckler. Wan'Dale versus Leggett is close for sure. Let's do a quick comparison here. I think it's Leggett. Yeah, I'd go Leggett over Wan'Dale. There's no Darius Slayton this week. He's really close. I do think Wan'Dale's floor is a bit safer. Just a bit safer in terms of the role. And we've seen consistent targets for him. But Leggett / Jalen Coker, these are the clear top 2 receivers for the Panthers. And Leggett is definitely the guy I feel better about. He's back-to-back games over 13 points. I think he has a real ceiling as well. So, yeah, I'd probably go Leggett over Wan'Dale. Close call there. But I'd play Leggett and Wan'Dale, I think, both over Mostert. I don't feel great about Mostert on Monday Night Football versus the Rams. Tua or Kyler? Yeah, I'd go Tua over Kyler. I'd play Leggett over Hunter Henry. I'm playing Nico if I have him. Yeah, I'm risking it with Nico. I think there's a pretty good chance Nico plays in a pretty big game versus the Lions. Texans don't want to start slipping down. I think they've lost 1 or 2 straight, I believe. The Texans are big underdogs in that game. That they're 3.5-point underdogs at home. I thought that spread would actually be higher. The Giants were 6.5. So they're up to 9-point favorites in this game. How are the Giants favored by 9 in this game? I mean, it makes me like Tyrone Tracy even more, but it just feels like a lot of points to give the New York Football Giants. And we are underway in Germany. Panthers receiving the ball versus the Giants. Excited to watch this game on the live stream today. We are going to get to every single game on this live stream, every single relevant fantasy player in every single game on this live stream. We're going to talk through the very difficult start-sit decisions. I got a few more free player props for you on this live stream as well. And we're going to get to the DraftKings lineup also. Feeling pretty good about the DK lineup this week. Sam, DeAndre Swift, Pickens, Josh Downs. Love the app. Thanks, man. Yeah, if you guys haven't checked out the Walter Picks app yet, I do not know what you are waiting for. You got to download the app. It is a free app. It is in the TikTok bio. It's in the YouTube description. It is going to help you in fantasy. It is going to help you with player props. All right, we get to this question here. Swift, Pickens, Downs. Yeah, it's between Downs and Swift. And I think it's Downs. I really think you got to start Downs. Without Pittman, without Anthony Richardson, I mean, Downs is about as good a chance as anyone to get over 30% target share this week. You're going to want to start that, I think. Pickens is a good high ceiling option versus the Commanders for sure. I like him this week too. I like Swift versus the Pats. He's got a good matchup, but I think it's probably Downs over these guys. Let me compare Downs versus Swift here quickly. I'll compare Pickens here too. Swift projects actually a bit better than Downs. Wow, it's close between Swift and Downs. I would go Downs over Pickens. It might make sense to go Swift here. The Pats are 6-point underdogs. Bears are 6-point favorites in this game. The Patriots have been really bad versus the running backs. If Nico's back, do I start him over Cooper Kupp or A.J. Brown? I think you probably start him over both those guys if he's back. Patriots allowing the third most rushing yards per game in the NFL to running backs. Definitely bodes well for Swift. I mean, they've been trailing in most games. We've seen at least 18 points from running backs versus them multiple weeks in a row. Roshan is a threat to steal some of the goal line work, but yeah, I think it is probably Swift over Downs looking back at this. I do like Downs a lot, though, in PPR this week. I think he's a top 10 wide receiver option this week. Good morning, Sam. Usually need some start sits, but had Chase play Thursday. Yeah, I think I got this week in the bag. If you had Jamar Chase, if you had Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow on Thursday night, I mean, you're sitting so well. You're going to need a historic week from some players to lose. All right, Sam, big week. Pick 2 in half PPR. Nico, Dobbins, Pollard, D-Hop, or Devontae Smith. Yeah, so I think you kind of have to start Devontae Smith with him active. And then if Nico plays, you got to go Nico here. Oh, man, but you also have it's half PPR, which makes me want to play Dobbins also. The Chargers are big favorites versus the Titans. You're going to have to make this call probably before we know the Nico news. Yeah, I think it's Hopkins and Dobbins. I would go Hopkins and Dobbins over Devontae Smith. We did see a very good role for Hopkins last week. They tried to hit Jalen Hyatt. Looks like a pass interference call there. The first Giants play. Probably good for Tyrone Tracy. Hey, Sam, thoughts on Alec Pierce? Yeah, Alec Pierce and Adonai Mitchell, both interesting sleepers this week. I think we see Adonai Mitchell probably play his highest snap percentage of the season this week with Pittman out. This is the first game of the season Pittman is out. We saw Adonai Mitchell play a lot in those first couple of weeks with Downs out. Now Pittman's out. I think he's more of a one-for-one replacement. Not a clear one-for-one replacement, obviously, with Pittman. But we've seen Adonai Mitchell actually get targeted on a route run basis a ton. He ranks 5th, guys, in target per route run rate. Adonai Mitchell, 5th highest in the NFL. When he's running routes, Adonai Mitchell has been targeted over 35% of his routes. He just hasn't been out there. So actually, I'm a little bit more excited about Mitchell than I am about Alec Pierce, but both are definitely interesting sleepers this week for sure. Because again, Michael Pittman's out. They're playing the Bills. They're big underdogs versus the Bills. Eckler or Dobbins, I'd go Eckler. Marv or Taysom, it's probably Marv. I'd probably go Marv here over Taysom. I do like Taysom Hill this week a lot to score a touchdown. Show wide receivers, I got you. Switch over to the wide receiver ranks here. I know a lot of difficult start sits for the receivers. We're about to go game by game here momentarily. We'll talk through every single game. I think I would play Taysom over Evan Ingram with Mac Jones starting. Devontae is questionable, but he's going to play. Tank Dell with Nico playing. Yeah, I probably lean. Man, it's actually close between Devontae and Tank. Let me pull. I got the wide receiver ranks up here. I think I would go Devontae Smith. I got Tank Dell 3 spots ahead of Devontae Smith. In a 1 tier above, I'd go Tank Dell over Devontae Smith, even if Nico plays. I still think Tank Dell's in for a pretty good role, even if Nico plays. with Steph Diggs obviously out for the season. So many wide receiver injuries this season. It's absolutely crazy. Tough schedule this week. Waddle, D-Hop, BTJ, and Amari need to start 2 here. I don't think Amari's playing. I think you go the middle 2 here. I play D-Hop and Brian Thomas Jr. I do think Waddle is a sneaky good option this week, though. I think Waddle's being a bit underrated. It's being a bit underrated. I do think Nico plays, and if he plays, I think you have to start him. 4th and 8. Are the Giants really going for 4th and 8 here versus the Panthers? Doesn't seem like it. Pick 2 flex Downs, Westbrook, Akine, Ladd, and John. Yeah, this one's easy. Downs and Ladd. I mean, playing Downs and Ladd over Westbrook, Akine, and John Smith easily. Downs and Ladd are actually both really good options. Both very good options. All right, let's talk through the DraftKings lineup, the free player props one more time quick, and then we're going to go game by game. So I took the Tracy over 71.5 rushing yards line this morning on Germany time. We're on Germany time this morning. I like Taysom Hill receiving and Tajay Spears receiving today. Both these were set, I think, too low. 18.5 receiving yards for Taysom. He was over that last week. The receiver room for the Saints is arguably the least talented wide receiver room of all time. And I don't say that like we've seen some bad wide receiver depth charts, but the Saints, it's bleak, man. You got Marcus Valdes-Scantling and Mason Tipton as the top 2 receivers for the Saints today. So I like Taysom's over. I like Tajay Spears over 8.5 receiving yards as well. Shout out to everybody in this live stream right now with us on Germany time this morning. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button if you're watching live on YouTube, guys. Do appreciate that. Helps me out way more than you realize. If you're watching live on TikTok, guys, hit the follow button. I am not able to see your comments unless you are following. That is just how TikTok works. We got a lot of followers in the TikTok live comments. You're going to be shown in the comments if you're following. That is not, I don't make the rules. That's just how it works. I appreciate the follows, though. I do appreciate that. All right, let's get to the DraftKings lineup quick. I got this up on the YouTube live. We're live on TikTok and YouTube. You get the same information on both lives, but the YouTube live is a slightly better viewing experience. You can get there right in a TikTok live if you're watching live on TikTok, because I can share screen on the YouTube live stream. You can't do that on the TikTok live stream. All right, so here's the DraftKings lineup this week. I'm stacking Brock Purdy with Juwan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall. Taking a bit of a risk here with the 49ers stack. I think at least one of these receivers is going to outperform. They're both priced, I think, a little bit too low in this matchup versus the Bucs. Feel very good about Brock Purdy and his price versus the Bucs. I'm going with Taysom Hill at tight end. I think he's got multiple touchdown upside this week, a good tournament option at his price on DraftKings. Khalil Shakir is a top 12 wide receiver this week. Without Amari Cooper, I do not think Amari's playing. We already know Keon Coleman is out. And he gets a great matchup versus the Colts. He's had an extremely high floor, Khalil Shakir, over the last several weeks. I think the ceiling is there for him this week as well if Amari's out. We're going Saquon, Aaron Jones in the running back slots. Love being able to get Saquon in this lineup versus the Cowboys. He's got slate-breaking upside. I think Aaron Jones versus the Jags is a smash as well. And we're going Josh Downs. I already talked about him a bit, but I think his floor and ceiling is great against the Bills without Michael Pittman Jr., without Anthony Richardson. We've seen Josh Downs ball in those types of situations this season. He's had Pittman in the lineup every single week, but he's been the number 1 receiver over Pittman. I think there's a pretty good chance we see a 30+% target share for Josh Downs. I think the other guy, like we were just talking about, Adonai Mitchell, is a very interesting tournament option as a pivot off of Downs. Again, his target per route run rate is over 35%. That's top 5 in the NFL. He just hasn't ran that many routes. He's averaging 10 routes per game. That ranks 140th. But he's being targeted on over 35% of those routes. There's a chance he actually leads the team in targets and has the high ceiling among the Colts in this game where they're big underdogs versus the Bills. I know the Bills have been pretty good versus tight ends. I don't feel great about Kyle Pitts because I'd just rather start Taysom Hill. I'd rather start Hunter Henry than Kyle Pitts. And therefore, I think he's probably a bench. You probably can go get Taysom and Hunter Henry in a bunch of leagues. I'm playing Kincaid over Pitts. I'm playing Hawkinson over Pitts. I'm playing Hunter Henry over Pitts. I'm playing Jake Ferguson over Pitts. I'm playing Evan Ingram over Pitts. Taysom Hill over Pitts. I'm playing Otten and McBride and Kelsey and Kittle over Pitts too. All those guys. I would have started Gesicki and Andrews over Pitts too on Thursday night. I did that in some spots. Oh, look, I don't think the ceiling's terrible for Pitts. He's startable if you don't have one of those guys I just mentioned. But he showed his true colors again last week. He had 2 points, 1 catch, 11 yards. This game might not be close. The Saints have basically nobody on offense. He had 1 target last week. Only played 54% of snaps. He's now been under 60% of snaps in back-to-back weeks. He's not running very many routes. Even the game where he popped off for 25 points, his best fantasy game, I think, of all time. He scored 2 TDs in that game. He almost fumbled the goal line in that one. He actually had a season-low snap percentage. He only played 48% of snaps in that game. Only an 18% target share. It's not like this is Pitts is a guy you can really trust every single week. And the Panthers are marching now. All right. I'm going with the Pats defense too in that DraftKings line. I think they're a sneaky option with the struggling Bears offense. Frank Michael Smith, man, how we doing? Darnell Mooney goes crazy today, calling it now. Yeah, I've been in on Darnell Mooney, I feel like, for a while at this point. Drake London supposedly going to play this week. There was the shot earlier in the week that Drake London was not going to play. But Darnell Mooney is one of the safest floors, in all fantasy. He's got at least 3 catches every single game since week 2. He has not gone under 6.8 fantasy points. He's really pretty much a lock for 10 plus points every week. The Saints are a sneaky bad secondary now too. I think their ranking is a little bit worse than it shows. They ranked 20th versus receivers this season, but they just traded their top corner. They're dealing with some injuries in the secondary. They're allowing the 8th most yards per game to receivers already. I think the Saints will be a secondary to attack in fantasy over the rest of the season. So yeah, I feel pretty good about Mooney too. I definitely think there's a large ceiling there and a pretty good floor for Darnell Mooney. He's been a pretty good start for a little while now. Start 1, wide receiver Allen Douglas. Keenan Allen or Demario Douglas. I think I would probably go Keenan Allen there. Looks like Xavier Legette starting to heat up. Appreciate you, Frank. Love your content as well. Keep grinding, man. Hey, fam, start 2. Shakir, Debo, Kupp, Terry, please. Yeah, so we're starting Shakir this week. I do think you got to start Shakir this week. I think it's time to go game by game at this point in the live. We're going to go Shakir over Debo. I think Shakir over Kupp and Terry. So it's Debo, Kupp, and Terry. Let's break this one down. Let me go back to the wide receiver tiers on the TikTok live. And I'll pull up I got the wide receiver ranks already up on the YouTube live. But yeah, I think I would probably go Shakir, then Debo, then Kupp. So I think it's probably Shakir and Debo. It's not easy to bench Kupp. I get you want to start Terry McLaurin too, but I don't think Amari Cooper's playing too. I'm factoring in, I do not think Amari's playing. That could change later in the live stream. He is still a true question mark. He could play. They activated 2 players off the practice squad, 2 wide receivers off the practice squad yesterday, though. He obviously didn't play last week. And even if he plays, we haven't seen Amari play like this full role. They kind of need him to today because Keon Coleman's out. But we've really only seen 2 games with Amari Cooper in it. The first game, he played 35% of snaps and was learning plays on the fly and ended up scoring a touchdown and get 66 yards in that game. Pretty good outcome. Second week, he gets hurt. And he played 50% of snaps in that game. Hurt his wrist. He had 1 catch, 3 yards. The floor is 0 points today for Amari. I currently lean towards him not playing, which is part of the reason I really like Shakir. I think if Amari ends up playing, then it maybe is Kupp over Shakir. Probably pretty close at that point, though. I still like Shakir. Whether or not Amari plays, I don't think he's playing 100% of snaps. All right, let's get to the game-by-game portion of this live stream. Let's go to the first game we're going to talk through. We already talked through the Giants and Panthers. The Panthers are knocking on the doorstep, by the way. I don't know how the Giants were 9-point favorites. Looks like the Panthers just got in the end zone based on what I'm looking at here. All right, let's start with this Bills-Colts game. I think this is a good game to talk through. We talked about Shakir a lot already. Josh Allen, he projects as QB1. Got to be starting Josh Allen. I don't think we'll get any questions about that. The Bills are surprisingly only 4-point favorites in this game versus the Colts. One of the more surprising lines to me. We've got the Vikings. They're favored by 7. You got the Chiefs favored by 7.5. You got the 49ers favored by 6.5. The Bears favored by 6. The Chargers are favored by 8. The Eagles are favored by 7. The Giants were favored by 9 in this game. You're only going to give the Bills 4 points versus the Colts. The Colts offense did not look good in their last game. I know there's a slightly more difficult matchup versus the Vikings D-line for them. I definitely like the Bills with the 4 points in this one. I think that the way they spread the ball around, I don't think it's going to impact them too bad to not have Keon Coleman and potentially Amari Cooper in this game. I think Khalil Shakir, Dalton Kincaid, James Cook, even Dawson Knox, even Mac Hollins can pick up the slack a little bit with Josh Allen at the helm. I like the Bills in this game. You got to be starting Khalil Shakir, especially if Amari Cooper ends up sitting, which again, I do think he probably does. You got to start James Cook in this matchup too. There's a long list of good running back options. Yeah, the Panthers just scored. Upset alert. I don't know how they were favored by 9. I mean, the Giants in this game, but it would be a fun trend for the Panthers to start of just Bryce Young terminating NFL coaches. I think there's an actual chance Brian Daboll gets terminated. And then we go back-to-back weeks where Bryce Young terminates head coaches. Who do they play next week? That coach has got to be on the radar. Refresh for updates. I got you, Trevor. Let me reopen the app here. I know there's a lot of injury news to catch up on. Yeah, it looks like this is updated now. We got Shakir up at the top. Mix in Devontae or CeeDee Lamb. Yeah, so CeeDee Lamb's going to play this week. CeeDee Lamb's going to play, and A.J. Brown's going to play. I thought both those guys had a pretty good chance of not playing earlier in the week. It's really tough to bench CeeDee Lamb. It's not the same CeeDee Lamb situation we're used to. We got Cooper Rush starting for the Cowboys. We got Mac Jones and Cooper Rush starting this week. I think I'd probably go mix in, and then CeeDee Lamb versus Devontae is really close. We got them back-to-back in the ranks. I think I lean towards Lamb there. I mean, it's a really, really close one. We got them projected for the exact same amount of points, 14.6 PPR points in the Walter Picks app. I think I'd probably lean Lamb. I think that the floor is just a little bit higher for Lamb, even with Cooper Rush starting. The Cowboys are going to be trailing in this game. All right, so we were talking about the Bills side of the ball there momentarily. Let me switch back to that. The James Cook is a top 10 running back option, got to be started. Khalil Shakir's got to be started. Whether or not Amari plays, you probably want to start Khalil Shakir with Keon Coleman out and a good matchup versus the Colts. Dalton Kincaid, he's also a really good option this week. I would play Kincaid over Taysom Hill, and I feel pretty good about Taysom this week against the Falcons. I think Kincaid's probably that line for me when it comes to the tight ends. Let me pull up the tight end ranks here on the live stream. I got Kincaid one spot ahead of Taysom here. Taysom or Ertz, it's definitely Taysom over Ertz. I don't think that one's like really close at all. I got Ertz all the way down in tier 6. Taysom for me, he's right there in tier 4, at the top of tier 4. And Kincaid's the end of tier 3. Tier 1, George Kittle. Tier 2, Kelsey and Otten. Cade Otton's a must-start tight end right now. Sorry, going back to the game-by-game previews here. I know I'm getting sidetracked very easily by these start sits. A lot of tough start sits today. Again, we're going to talk through every single game, every relevant player in every single game on this live stream. I got to feel pretty good about the Bills' offense. And I feel like they should be favored by more than 4 points. But I'm also aware enough, not to overestimate my ability to predict spreads better than Vegas. I trust the spreads to some extent, even more than I trust the player props. The markets are very sharp with the spread. The Bills are only 4-point favorites in this game. And if this ends up coming true, and this actually ends up being a pretty close game, I mean, Josh Allen's going to smash. James Cook is going to smash. Khalil Shakir and Kincaid are probably all smashing. And even if this game's not close, they probably scored a lot to make that the case. So, yeah, I feel pretty good about all 4 of these guys. Allen, James Cook, Khalil Shakir, Dalton Kincaid, all pretty much must-starts this week versus the Colts. Mac Hollins, an interesting deep sleeper. Mac Daddy Hollins, he's probably going to have a big role in this game. He had 5 catches, 30 yards, and a touchdown. Had 68% snap percentage last week. Again, I don't think Amari's playing, and that could be close to 100% snap percentage for Mac Daddy Hollins. Curtis Samuel, you got to think he gets a little bit more involved. He's good to go for week 10. What other week would make more sense for Curtis Samuel than this week? We really have not seen much Curtis Samuel this season. I was drafting him in my underdog drafts a decent amount. I was in on the Curtis Samuel role this season, reuniting with his offensive coordinator from his best Panthers days. We really haven't seen it. He hasn't been fully healthy like all season. But I do think we could see more Curtis Samuel in this game, especially if Mark Cooper's out. Again, Keon Coleman's also out. So maybe we see more Curtis Samuel, another interesting deep sleeper to watch out for. On the Colts side of the ball, a bunch of must-starts as well. JT and Josh Downs need to be started. And I think Adonai Mitchell really is an interesting deep sleeper. Alec Pierce has been the most productive Colts receiver over the course of the season. Guys, Alec Pierce is averaging 22.9 yards per reception this season. Wild stuff. He doesn't have enough receptions to rank yet, but that's got to be top 5 in the NFL. 22.9 yards per reception. He's had 3 different games over 40 yards per reception. Crazy stuff. I still think Adonai Mitchell. I'd actually go Adonai Mitchell personally over Alec Pierce if I had to make that start sit decision. We haven't seen a game over 10 points yet for Adonai Mitchell. I do think he has a high ceiling in this game. The Bills are going to likely be leading. And this is probably going to be a season high, career high snap percentage for Adonai Mitchell. And this is a similar feeling I had about Mark Andrews heading into Thursday night. We just, for the first time all season, we went into a week where it was pretty obvious Mark Andrews was going to get over a 70% snap share. And really not since week 1. He's not in here because he already played. Not since week 1 had we seen Mark Andrews in a sort of situation where we knew he was going to play over 70% of snaps. We expected it week 1, and he ended up playing actually 74% of snaps in week 1, a disastrous week 1 for him. But then this past Thursday, Isaiah Likely was out. And so that was the first time all season that was the case. And what do we see? 87% snap share for Mark Andrews. He smashes 6 catches, 68 yards, and a touchdown. We could see something similar for Adonai Mitchell today. It's not unreasonable to expect a season high, career high snap percentage for AD Mitchell, who again, he's number 5 in the NFL in targets per route run. So I think there's a real ceiling for him as a deeper sleeper. Not saying he's a must start or anything, obviously, but Flacco has targeted him in a similar rate to Anthony Richardson when he's been out there. But Downs, JT, they're the must starts in this game. I don't feel great generally about Flacco in this one. He looked really bad last time out. JT, this is such a good spot for him. There's really very few situations where you got to be benching JT. The Bills have been decent versus running backs on the ground. They're ranked about middle of the pack in terms of rushing yards allowed, and they've allowed the 7th fewest touchdowns per game, only half a touchdown per game to running backs. But they have been allowing so many receptions to running backs. I mean, they play this sort of prevent style defense that leads to so many running back receptions. 6.8 receptions per game to the running backs this season allowed by the Bills. That's 3rd worst in the NFL. They're allowing the 2nd most yards per game. I think JT's receiving lines, prop wise, pretty sharp to be going after those this week. That's the Bills and Colts. Again, I'm pretty surprised that game's only 4-point spread. But if it ends up being close, I think there's a lot of very good fantasy players come out of that game. Then the next game here, the Vikings and the Jags. We got Mac Daddy, Mac Jones back. Mac and cheese, Mac Jones. Mac Daddy is Mac Hollins. My bad. I'm getting my Macs confused. We got Mac Hollins and Mac Jones relevant this week. But Mac and cheese, Mac Jones, 7-point underdog at home versus the Vikings. Vikings defense has been sneaky good this season. Mac Jones probably going to get sacked a decent amount of times in this game. We got him projected outside the top 20 quarterbacks. Definitely not a guy you want to be starting in fantasy. Evan Ingram gets a downgrade with Mac Jones starting. Brian Thomas Jr. gets a slight downgrade with Mac Jones starting. It's possible. Mac Jones is basically just as good as Trevor Lawrence has been in this offense. That's not saying much, though. Trevor Lawrence has been awful this season. It sounds like this could be a lost season for Trevor Lawrence. There's some rumors out there, some murmurs similar to what sort of happened with Dak Prescott. He might just be out for the season. I mean, what's the point sort of at this point for the Jags? They're likely not a true contender. Trevor Lawrence went over 20 points 3 times this season, but he ranks middle of the pack in yards. I mean, his completion percentage, 61.3%. That ranks 32nd in the NFL. His yards per attempt is about average. On top of that, he ranks 26th in quarterback rating. I mean, he has not been good. He has not been good this season, averaging almost an interception per game too. So maybe Mac Jones comes in and it's about what we had with Trevor Lawrence. That's certainly possible. I think this is a better situation for Mac Jones than what he had in New England. He has actual weapons on this team. So that'll be interesting to see. We've never really seen Mac Jones with actual talent around him. This is a good spot on paper for Brian Thomas Jr. too. And I do kind of want to start him if I have him. He's probably one of the more difficult start-sits with Mac Jones playing, but the Vikings, they have been a pass funnel defense this whole season. It's extremely difficult to run against the Vikings, and they're about average or below average against the pass, which has led to extremely pass-heavy games versus the Vikings. Their offense has also been good enough just to get leads. They're allowing the 2nd most receptions per game, the 3rd most yards per game, and the 4th most touchdowns per game to receivers. And they get Brian Thomas Jr. this week. Obviously, Christian Kirk's out for the season. Gabe Davis is going to be up in this one. We have not seen Gabe Davis in the lineup in a little bit. When was the last time Gabe Davis was active? Let's take a look at that. Yeah, it hasn't been since week 7 versus the Pats. That was the game I think Gabe Davis got hurt in week 8. Haven't really seen a full game from him since week 7. Now he comes back in a pretty good spot. He's an interesting sleeper as well. At least one of Gabe Davis or Brian Thomas Jr. is likely to have a big play in this game and a decent amount of yards in this game. I don't really want to start Etienne or Bigsby in this one. The Vikings, again, they've been pretty good versus the running backs. Bigsby's touchdown dependent. He's got Mac Jones at the helm. I really don't think that bodes well for him scoring touchdowns. The Vikings, they've allowed a bunch of receptions to running backs, but that's going to be Etienne. That's going to be Dearness Johnson. It's not going to be Tank Bigsby, who actually ran more routes than usual, I think, in his last game. Yeah, 14 routes as a season high, probably a career high for Bigsby in terms of routes. He had no targets, though. He just has no receiving role. He's averaging less than a target per game, Tank Bigsby this season. He is not a capable receiving back. So, yeah, I'm starting Evan Ingram. I'd play Taysom over Ingram, but then it's Ingram. I think they're in a really close tier there. And I want to start Brian Thomas Jr. too. I think Gabe Davis is a very interesting sleeper as well. At least two of these three guys I expect to outperform fantasy expectations. Evan Ingram, Brian Thomas Jr., Gabe Davis. The Vikings, though, are probably going to crush the Jags. There actually is some weather. Weatherman Sam's here for you all season, guys. And there's some weather being talked about for this game. Moderate rain. I have absolutely no concern about that game, that Vikings game. There's likely going to be some precipitation in that game, but it's just not concerning. Very quickly, we're getting the Tracy Hunt. It's still the first quarter. I definitely still feel good about Tracy in this game. I know they're losing already, and the Giants offense is struggling, but I still think Tracy ends up likely performing pretty well in this one. All right, that's the Jag side of this game. Justin Jefferson, he projects as wide receiver 1. Darnold's a top 5 QB option. He's got to be started. Aaron Jones is a great option. Hawkinson, I think, can be started in certain spots. I do still prefer Taysom and Hunter Henry over him. I had the 3.5 receptions line for Hawk last week. Got 3, fell just short. He probably grows, though, in terms of the snap percentage that he had last week. He only played 45% of snaps last week. I think he likely plays more than that this week. I thought there was a chance he was going to go out there and instantly play 80% of the snaps like we saw last season. I think it was getting a little bit over my skis on that one. Route participation was still over 60%, though, and that probably rises. Hawkinson's not a bad tight end option. He's not a must start, though. Aaron Jones, Sam Darnold, Justin Jefferson, they are borderline must starts. Let me go to the running back ranks here on the live. Aaron Jones, there's very few running backs I'm starting over Aaron Jones this week. James Cook, I think I would. Breece Hall, I would. I would have started Tyron Tracy over Aaron Jones, too. I know that's not off to a good start in the first quarter. Jonathan Taylor, Joe Mixon, Bijan, Kyron, Achane, Saquon, Kamara. That's it. That's the guys I'm playing over Aaron Jones. The Jags have been so bad defensively. I mean, when you look at the defense metrics this season, I mean, they're right there with the Panthers in terms of how bad they've been this season. We haven't seen a big game from Aaron Jones in a couple of weeks, but the role has been there for Aaron Jones. I mean, this is the biggest role workload-wise I think we've really seen in Aaron Jones' career. Back-to-back games, over 19 carries. He had 4 targets, too, last week, 25 opportunities for Aaron Jones. I mean, there wasn't that much. It wasn't that frequent. We would see roles like that for him back on the Packers. He was almost always in a 50-50 timeshare, sort of a Nick Chubb type of situation where he'd make up for it in efficiency. But if he gets 25 touches in this game versus the Jags, I mean, he's going over 30 points. Like that's the ceiling for Aaron Jones this week. Has to be started. The ceiling's there. The floor is there volume-wise. And even Cam Akers, he's an interesting sleeper at running back. I know a lot of bye weeks this week and not a lot of running back options. Cam Akers is an interesting one. His role grew last week, 22% snap share. It's his first game he played really for the Vikings at all. And he played pretty well. Cam Akers has been efficient when he's been out there this season. He had eight opportunities last week, had 7.7 yards per carry on his 6 carries, had 46 rushing yards. I mean, he definitely could get into this game if this game ends up not being close. And again, the Vikings are 7-point favorites in this game in Jacksonville versus Mac Jones. I'd probably take the Jags side of that, but that feels like a pretty fair spread to me. 7 points for the Vikings versus Mac Jones. All right, on to the next game, a 7.5-point spread for the Chiefs versus the Broncos. Again, I don't really get how the Chiefs were favored by less than the Giants were favored in this Germany time game. This spread got to 9 points for the Giants before the game started. Really crazy stuff. Mahomes, not an exciting start this week. Last week was the first week all season I felt excited to start Mahomes. And he came through. First game over 20 points because he had the matchup versus the Bucks. This is why I like Brock Purdy this week versus the Bucks. Almost every single quarterback is smashing versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Almost every single one. And Brock Purdy probably going to do the same thing. But Mahomes gets the Broncos this week. These big favorites. Probably going to be a very run-heavy game script. Kareem Hunt is borderline must start. Very, very good option. I probably would have gone Tracy over Kareem Hunt myself if I had to make that start sit on Germany time. I probably wouldn't be feeling great about it either. This is a good spot for Kareem Hunt. He's seeing a massive role on the ground. Pacheco obviously still out. He had 27 carries for the second time last week. He's leading the NFL in rush attempts per game. He's more rush attempts per game than every other running back. Think about that for a second. Pretty crazy stuff. His floor has been like 13 points over the last month, and they're big favorites in this one. Got to feel good about Hunt. You got to start Kelsey. Obviously, he's a top 2 option. Yeah, Tracy definitely needs to step it up. I do think Nico's starting tonight. Yeah, we'll get to that game here coming up. Kelsey's a must start. Hopkins is borderline must start too. I mean, we were on the Hopkins stuff last week. He was a must start for me on this live stream last week. Hopefully, a lot of you guys started him last week. And yeah, you got to start him again in a lot of situations. Not as good of a matchup this week. I mean, there's a really good spot versus the Bucs on Monday Night Football last week. The Broncos have been pretty good versus receivers. Pat Surtain, obviously one of the scarier corners in the NFL. Zay Flowers did have a big game against them last week, 5 catches, 127, but much different role than Hopkins is in. They rank 10th best in terms of receptions allowed, receiving yards allowed versus receivers. The Denver Broncos do. So not as good of a matchup for Hopkins, but if he's in that Rashee Rice role, and he wasn't fully in the Rice role, it's really Kelce taking a lot of that Rashee Rice role. And Kelce has to be started. I mean, Kelce's coming off a career-high receptions. Career high for the 35-year-old future Hall of Fame tight end. 14 catches, 100 yards. I mean, Kelce was on my do not draft list. I still think Kelce's a trade away because of the fantasy football playoff narrative. Last season, guys, Travis Kelce went under 10 fantasy points every single week in the fantasy playoffs. And think about it. He's 35 years old. The Chiefs are going to have the 1 seed locked up a month from now before the fantasy football playoffs start, and they're not going to be incentivized to push Kelce to his limit in the fantasy playoffs when it matters most, when he also has 3 very difficult matchups. And he's pretty matchup proof with the role he's in right now. He's one of the guys that could really crush me because I have absolutely no exposure to Travis Kelce across all my underdog drafts, across all my fantasy leagues. I do not think he's going to smash in the fantasy playoffs, but he's a smash this week for sure. So you're starting Kelce, Hunt. I don't feel great about Mahomes. I would have played Daniel Jones over Mahomes. That's not off to a great start. And Hopkins is a good start too. I'm playing Brian Thomas Jr. over Pearsall, yeah. We'll go to the wide receiver ranks here. Shout out to everyone in the TikTok live right now. Hit the follow button, guys. If you aren't following on TikTok, I will not see your comment. If you're watching live on YouTube, guys, smash the like button, hit the subscribe button. We are going to be live for the next 3 hours, talking through every single game. So far, we talked through the Giants-Panthers game. We were surprised about the spread there this morning. They were 9-point favorites before the game started. They're now 1.5-point underdogs after the first quarter, down 7-0 in Germany. I like the Bills versus the Colts. A lot of must starts in that game. We talked through that one. We talked through the Vikings-Jags. We just talked through the Chiefs side of that Broncos game. Let's go to the Broncos side of this game. Not very many must starts on the Broncos side of the ball. I think Courtland Sutton is a really risky start. He projects well. He's been pretty consistent. This Chiefs matchup is really, really a tough one, though, for the receivers. It's even tougher for the running backs. You cannot start Javonte Williams with confidence this week. Courtland Sutton's been pretty consistent. Back-to-back games with at least 7 catches and 100 yards for Sutton. He actually projects as a back-end wide receiver 2 in the Walter Picks app, wide receiver 24 in the ranks. He's startable. Just a little bit of a scary start. I think we probably have Javonte ranked a little bit too high here. Hasn't been over 12 fantasy points since week 7 with some good matchups in there. We've just seen no running backs perform well versus the Chiefs. They're allowing only 14 points per game in total to running backs. Bucky Irving didn't do anything. Rashad White scored. He still only had 12.5 points. I mean, they stuffed Alvin Kamara, 12.5 points. I mean, what is the real ceiling for Javonte in this game? It's like 14 points would be like a good outcome for Javonte. He's probably going under 10. And there were some reports also that they want to get Estime more involved. Estime to see an increased workload. That's not good for Javonte Williams. I think it's likely that increased workload too comes in the red zone and in the goal line work, the short yardage work. My comp for Audric Estime in this year's draft was Jordan Howard. He's really looked that way so far in the NFL. He's had some fumbling issues at times this season. He hasn't lost all those fumbles. I don't think he only has 1 lost fumble this season. I think he had a couple recovered by the Broncos as well. But Estime is a very good short yardage back. Javonte is the better receiving back of the two, but Estime is a capable receiving back too. Obviously, Jaleel McLaughlin is going to have a role still as well. So yeah, you're really not starting any of these guys. I don't feel great about Bo Nix this week either. None of these guys are must start. Sutton's the best of the group. I really want to be benching those running backs if I can. I'm playing Tank Dell over Taysom Hill. Show starts it. Yeah, I got you. I'm going to go Tank Dell over Taysom for sure. All right, so that's the Broncos-Chiefs game. I think the Chiefs stay undefeated in this game. I would be pretty shocked if the Broncos were able to pull that one out. The next game here, the Falcons and the Saints. Yeah, so let's talk about Taysom Hill, man. I'm excited to talk about Taysom Hill. It was National Taysom Hill Day last week for all those who celebrated like I did on the touchdown prop for Taysom. I like the receiving prop for Taysom this week with the receiver situation for the Saints. I mean, the Saints, guys, I really think, sometimes we over-exaggerate a bit in our analysis of the NFL and in a fantasy and how bad certain situations are. There's maybe been times we said the Giants depth chart is one of the worst receiver rooms we've ever seen. The Patriots depth chart, one of the worst wide receiver rooms we've ever seen. The Panthers, I mean, they're running out there with Xavier Legette and Jalen Coker and David Moore. But I really don't think we've seen something like this with the Saints this week. I mean, the Saints depth chart, guys, just to reiterate here, I'll pull it up in the app. We just go to the receivers on the Saints. So Mason Tipton, he's their top receiver this week, Mason Tipton. Then it's Jordan Mims, he's a running back. We got Marcus Valdes-Scantling. Olave's out. Cedric Wilson's out. Rashid Shaheed's out. Bub Means is out. Some of these guys we don't even have in the app. Like they literally just got activated and no one has ever heard of them before. We have today at wide receiver, it's Mason Tipton, then Marcus Valdes-Scantling. Those are two names, serious NFL fans will know. Then we got Dante Pettis is probably the wide receiver 3. Kevin Austin Jr. and Jermaine Jackson. Jermaine Jackson and Kevin Austin Jr. are relevant receivers for the Saints this week. It's really Taysom Hill. It's Alvin Kamara is their wide receiver 1, and I think Taysom and Juwan Johnson are going to be their wide receiver 2s. Mason Tipton, he's an interesting sleeper this week. He probably will lead the receiver room in target share. I don't think any of those other receivers we even should talk about. Marcus Valdes-Scantling, Jermaine Jackson, and Kevin Austin Jr. Man, I mean, crazy stuff. But yeah, you got to feel good about Taysom's role in this game. I mean, we saw Taysom Hill get 10 touches last week, 5 targets. Sorry, I think it was 9 touches. He had 5 targets, 4 catches, and he had 5 carries. Ended up with 16 points. He scored a rushing touchdown. I think he's got a great chance at a touchdown this one. He actually scored twice versus the Falcons last time out. I mean, they just need playmakers. And Taysom is one of the 2 or 3 playmakers they have. Kamara's role, he projects as running back 1 this week. I mean, he's playing wide receiver. He leads the NFL in receptions, leads the NFL in receiving yards. I think this is the 9th straight season. It's either 8 or 9 straight seasons that Alvin Kamara has ranked in the top 5 of running back target share. He ranks number 1 this year. 29-year-old Alvin Kamara leads the NFL in targets at running back, leads the NFL in target share, leads the NFL in targets per route run rate. He's first in receptions. He's first in receiving yards. And the Saints are projected to lose this game pretty badly because of the situation we just talked about. They're 3.5-point underdogs versus the Falcons. The Falcons offense should be able to score versus a pretty underwhelming Saints defense. No longer has Marshawn Lattimore. We'll get to the Falcons out of the ball here in a second. But yeah, I feel good about Taysom. Obviously, Kamara's a must start. Don't need to talk too much about that. I would play Taysom. I would play Kelsey over Otten. I'd play both those guys over Taysom. The tight ends I'm playing over Taysom Hill. It's a pretty short list of tight ends I'm playing over Taysom Hill this week. It goes Kittle, Kelsey, Otten, McBride, Kincaid. Then it's Taysom. And I do think I would go Kincaid over Taysom because I don't think Amari's going to play. And even if Amari's active, I don't think he's going to play this huge amount of snaps and have this massive role. So Kincaid is suddenly like the number 2 receiving option. I would definitely go Kincaid over Hawkinson. I'd play Kincaid over Taysom, over Ingram, over Ferg. I would go Taysom over Ingram for sure with Mac Jones starting. I think the Falcons probably cover the spread, 3.5-point spread here. They're 3.5-point favorites. Derek Carr is back for the 2nd straight week, but he's throwing to receivers nobody's ever heard of. And Mason Tipton, Taysom Hill, Juwan Johnson, Alvin Kamara, these are the top receiving options for the Saints today. All right, on the Falcons side of the ball. Moving on from that one. Again, I like the Taysom receiving yards prop today. Pollard or Dowdle full PPR. I'd probably go Pollard there, I think. That one's probably close. Can you play both Kamara and Hill? Parker, I don't hate it at all. I mean, they're going to combine for multiple touchdowns today, most likely. You're getting at least 1 touchdown from Kamara and Taysom combined today. Sometimes it actually raises your floor when you stack players on the same team like that. Like, it's the same thing with the Lions running backs. Very high floor move to go with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs because they're going to combine over 100 yards and a touchdown every week. All right, Falcons. Then we'll get to the Cowboys game next. Seeing a request for that. Fun Cowboys game on our TV screens in a few hours from now. Okay, so for the Falcons, you're starting Bijan. Obviously, great spot for him versus the Saints. Saints have been crushed by running backs over the last month, absolutely annihilated. I mean, Bijan has also been heating up. He's not heating up anymore. This is considered on fire where I'm from. 4 straight here, over 21 points for Bijan Robinson. He's had an amazing schedule so far. He's got a pretty good playoff schedule for fantasy. He is a potential league-winning fantasy running back. If he stays healthy, his receiving role is not that far off from, at times, what we've seen for Kamara. He had back-to-back games with 7 catches. 14 catches and over 100 receiving yards in his last 2 games. Now he gets the Saints on deck in a game that's projected to be relatively close. Drake London, he's going to be active, and that means he's borderline must start in this matchup without Marshawn Lattimore. Both London and Mooney, both top 20 receiver options, both very good starts this week, London and Mooney. Let me go to the receiver ranks here on the TikTok live. Seeing a lot of receiver questions. I'll switch over to the receiver ranks again on the YouTube live as well. So we're starting Mooney, we're starting London. Kirk Cousins, not a horrible option. I would have started Daniel Jones over him, which has not been off to a good start. But Kirk Cousins is startable. Him versus Mahomes, I think that's pretty close. I think we got Mahomes projected slightly ahead of Kirk. I might go Kirk there. I think it's close, though. And then Kyle Pitts, I really don't want to start. I don't feel great starting Kyle Pitts. He had 1 point, 2 points last week. 1 catch, 11 yards. His snap percentage is declining. He's under 60%, he's under 55% of the snaps in back-to-back games. He's barely running any routes. He had 1 target last week, a 4% target share. I mean, it's not a terrible matchup versus the Saints. Last time he played the Saints, guys, he had 0 points. A 0 burger versus the Saints last time. 3 targets, no catches. We had a 2-point game last week. I mean, the ceiling is there for Pitts. The reason I really think Pitts is basically a must bench, though, is I like starting Taysom more. I like Hunter Henry more. Hey, Sam Sunday. Hope all is well. What do I do for wide receiver? D-Hop, Coleman, Addison, Mooney. Would you also love the prop? Thanks as always. Yeah, so Coleman's out. Mooney, this one's between Mooney and D-Hop. And I think it's pretty close between those 2 guys. I think we might have. Yeah, they're actually back-to-back in their ranks. I think I lean Mooney over Hopkins, given their matchups. I mean, the matchup's way better for Mooney. The role is arguably better for Hopkins. I don't know if that's like a known for sure thing locked in yet. We had a 60% snap share from Hopkins last week, a big jump up from week 8, just like we expected. And he saw a 21% target share, 9 targets in that one, but a much better matchup that he had versus the Bucs. He obviously scored twice. I think I'd probably go Mooney over D-Hop. Definitely a close call there. But definitely you can't start Addison or Coleman in this spot. It's really between those 2 guys. Sam, Daniel Jones looks rough. Yeah, Nick, what's new? And I think it's probably going to end up being like an ugly 15 fantasy points for Daniel Jones. That's kind of, a very real outcome to brace for anytime you got to start Daniel Jones. All right, let's go to the Cowboys game next. So we just talked through the Falcons-Saints. I think the Falcons probably beat the Saints by more than 3.5. And I like Taysom Hill a lot this week. And obviously Kamara, he projects as running back 1. All right, let's hop over to the Cowboys game. Cowboys versus Eagles. It's a later window game. The Eagles are 7-point favorites in Dallas in this game. We got Cooper Rush and Trey Lance supposedly is going to get some snaps today as well. I mean, let Trey Lance cook, man. Let's get Trey Lance in the game. I know Cooper Rush is like one of the better backup quarterbacks in the NFL. At least there's a chance he is. He didn't look terrible when he went out there last week when Dak went down. Dak, by the way, looking out for the season. Likely out for the season. So this is going to be the start of the rest of the season here for the Cowboys. Cooper Rush, Trey Lance, quarterbacking. We got CeeDee Lamb playing through an injury. He's active. He projects as a top 15 receiver still. Kind of have to start CeeDee Lamb if you have him. I definitely made the mistake to start Tracy. I have Tracy. I need Tracy to pick it up big time. Across a lot of leagues, I have Tyron Tracy. I got his rushing prop as well. We obviously aren't going to hit them all. And the Panthers are up 10-0 right now. Did the Giants kick a field goal? No, they're up 10-0. My God. I mean, the Giants are struggling. The Cowboys, you got to start CeeDee Lamb. Rico Dowdle's an interesting one. So Zeke is going to be active in this game. Dowdle's coming off by far his best game of the season. 75 rushing yards. He had 5 catches, 32 yards, and a touchdown. Played 71% of the snaps. By far the season high for Dowdle. He had a 12.5% target share. That was 6 targets. They're 7-point underdogs in this game. It's not the best matchup. The Eagles have been pretty good versus running backs, guys. They rank top 10 in rushing yards, rushing touchdowns. They rank top 10 in receiving yards allowed. They've allowed the 3rd fewest points per game to running backs this season. So I'm a little bit nervous about Dowdle for that, but the playing time should still stay high, even with Zeke active. He should get at least 15 touches. I mean, 17 touches last game. I think it's at least 15 touches in this game, which is a really tough matchup versus the Eagles. Should be a decent PPR option, though. Back end running back 2, high end running back 3 is where I put Dowdle. Walter, how we doing? Classic mistake. My name is Sam. Walter is the AI model I helped build that powers the Walter Picks app. It's the best place you could possibly go for fantasy insights, best place you could possibly go for player props. Do appreciate everyone who's checked out the Walter Picks app. Best way you could possibly support me and the whole Walter Picks brand. The link is in the TikTok bio and YouTube description for that. Yeah, Tyron Tracy's absolutely selling. He's got 0 points. I mean, yikes. I thought he had at least, one rushing yard, maybe got a negative yard or fumbled or something. Rough stuff. Pollard, Pickens, or Dell. I'd probably go Pickens, then Dell, then Pollard. I think I'd probably rank him like that. All right, let's keep going with the Cowboys game. So you got to start CeeDee Lamb. He did get a lot of targets when Cooper Rush came in. CeeDee Lamb still going to see a massive role with Cooper Rush. Cooper Rush is, theoretically good enough to sustain a real offense as well. Dowdle's an interesting dart throw at running back if you need one. He did have 17 touches last week. He did have a season high 71% snap percentage. Probably see similar stuff this week, but a tough matchup, so he's not a must start. Pretty risky start, I think. Jake Ferguson is in theory startable. He's had a floor. He had at least 6 catches in 5 of his last 6 games. Jake Ferguson has at least 6 catches. He's 5th most catches per game in the NFL at tight end. He's leading all tight ends in routes run per game. He's playing every single snap, basically. He's running around every single passing play. Not a great matchup for him either. But he's not a horrible PPR option. Again, I like Taysom Hill more than him. I like Kincaid more than him. Nico's a start, yeah. I do think Nico plays. Tracy has 2 carries. I mean, you got to be kidding me. 2 carries so far in the first half. For Tracy, I really thought he's a lock for at least 15. And obviously the game's still going, so we'll see. Najee or Hunt. I think that's probably Hunt over Najee. Looks like Miles Sanders that got banged up. Tough to see. On the Eagles side of the ball, Jalen Hurts was suddenly questionable at one point this week. They quickly referenced an ankle injury that didn't end up being a real thing, or at least not a reported thing for Jalen Hurts. He's a must start versus the Cowboys. Cowboys have been absolutely crushed on the ground this season. Saquon could go wild in this game. I mean, the Cowboys, they've been annihilated by running backs this season, allowing the 4th most rushing yards, the 2nd most rushing touchdowns per game. That they rank bottom 10 in receiving yards allowed as well. Kamara went over 100 yards. Derrick Henry went over 100 yards. David Montgomery and Gibbs combined over 150 yards. Garendo had 85 yards. Brian Robinson, is that Bijan Robinson? He had over 100 total yards. He had 7 catches and 59 yards versus the Cowboys last week. I mean, Saquon's going over 100 yards in this game. He's got a great chance at a touchdown. He's been balling. The only running back I'm starting over Saquon is Kamara. A.J. Brown, thought he wasn't going to go this week after last week. I on Thursday night was saying I don't think he's going to play for those difficult Thursday night starts. He's going to play. He's active this week, so he has to be started. Every single week A.J. Brown plays, you pretty much have to start him. Devontae Smith is a good option as well. Devontae Smith, one of the most underrated receivers in the NFL, hands down. He ranks 15th in fantasy points per game this season. He ranks 1st in snaps played. I mean, that's kind of crazy. But I do think Devontae Smith, really only had 1 bad game. He didn't play in that week 4 game. He's had 1 game under 15 fantasy points, really, this whole season. Not a bad matchup for the receivers here either versus the Cowboys, but the running game should be very successful for the Eagles. And there's a chance they just lean extremely run heavy. Definitely a chance. Will Tracy finish the game with 10? I really hope he does. I took the Tracy rushing prop line this morning. I got Tracy in a lot of my fantasy leagues this morning. So we're certainly rooting for Tracy on this live stream today. I played Brian Thomas Jr., I think, over Taysom, in the flex. All right, so that's the Eagles-Cowboys game. I think the Cowboys, with the 7 points, make sense in that one. I think Cooper Rush can keep this competitive. But the Eagles have a chance to completely destroy, depending on how Cooper Rush plays and if how involved Trey Lance is and how he looks. I don't expect Trey Lance to play very well. If he plays, though, at least it would be exciting. At least it would be more exciting, I think, than Cooper Rush. All right, that's the Eagles and Cowboys game. That should definitely be a fun one in the late window. So we talked through the Falcons-Saints. We talked through the Broncos-Chiefs. We talked through the Vikings-Jags. We talked through the Bills-Colts. We obviously already talked through the Giants and Panthers on Munich time this morning. That one's been a banger of a football game, just like we expected, 10-0. Panthers are up. The Giants, we could see Bryce Young become the coach terminator, where he's just terminated coaches every single week. He terminated Dennis Allen, the Saints coach, last week with an epic comeback win. He's up 10-0 in Germany right now versus the Giants. Brian Dable could be on the chopping block. Definitely possible. Whoever the Panthers get next week has got to be a little scared if that ends up happening too. The Panthers offense really not doing great in this game, but they're up 10-0. All right, let's get to the next game here. We've talked through most of these. Let's get to the Steelers-Commanders. So we got Steelers-Commanders, 49ers, Bucks, Pats, Bears, Titans, Chargers, Jets, Cardinals, Lions, Texans, and then Dolphins, Rams. We got over half the games we've already been through. Another half or so to go. All right, let's go to Steelers versus Commanders. Let me switch back to the wide receiver ranks here, seeing people ask for that. I don't really want to start Drake May versus the Bears. I think there's better QB options out there. Switch to the running back ranks here. All right, let's get to this next game, the Steelers and the Commanders. This game is projected to be one of the few close games, one of the closest games projected at least for this week. The Steelers are 2-point underdogs in Washington. Both these teams having a pretty good season. Both these teams are playoff contenders right now and sort of on the rise. Jaden Daniels, a must-start quarterback, no matter who he's playing. The Steelers have been a really good defense. It's possible we see a down game from Jaden Daniels in this one versus the Steelers. They have one of the best defenses, but the Bears, they rank number 1 in points allowed. He's still 22 points versus them. He's rushing still more than I expected off the rib injury. I really was surprised how much Jaden Daniels was rushing last week after the rib injury in week 8. I was surprised he played and definitely surprised he ran as much as he did. Still at 35 rushing yards. I think he ran, 8 times still. So he's still running, which is good for fantasy. Obviously, he's a must start for sure. Wide receiver ranks. Yeah, I got you with the receiver ranks. Can't believe I started Tracy. Yeah, I'm definitely feeling the Tracy blues right now as well. All right, Austin Eckler. There's no Brian Robinson Jr. this week. Eckler is like in a 3-way timeshare. I really don't think he's a must start. He had a good game last week, 17 points versus the Giants. He scored. He's probably the goal line back. He's got a decent chance at a touchdown in this game, but he only played 47% of snaps. It was actually less than the week before. It's like not that much of a different role he had last week. He did have a 21% target share with only 4 targets, though. They did not throw the ball much last week. The Commanders versus the Giants just did not need to throw. Probably will be a little bit different versus the Steelers. I do think the Steelers offense will have success in this game. Russell Wilson's played pretty well. I think I would take the Commanders at home with the 2 points here. Terry McLaurin is a good start, not a must start, but a good start. He's also one of the most underrated receivers in the NFL. He only had 2 catches last week, scored twice. He's balling, man. He's got the 8th most touchdowns per game this season. He ranks 17th now in fantasy points per game. He really has not had a bad fantasy game since week 2. He's been at least 13 points in 7 straight games now. Has not ranked outside the top 30 receivers once since week 3. This is what consistency looks like. And he's made up for the inconsistent, low-performing games with touchdowns, just like last week. 19 receiving yards, but 2 TDs. Pickens or Najee Harris? Yeah, that one's close. Let's go to the Steelers side of this ball. So we're starting Jaden Daniels. Austin Eckler's a good start, not a must start. Terry McLaurin is a good start, not a must start in this matchup. I don't want to start Ertz. I don't want to start any of these other receivers for the Commanders. All right, and then for the Steelers, I do think Noah Brown is their clear wide receiver 2 now, by the way. And an interesting deep sleeper at a minimum. All right, let's get to the Steelers now, because there's a bunch of Steelers that are startable. Najee Harris, he's heating up. Najee Harris is heating up. I think it's 3 straight for Najee Harris. Over 16 fantasy points, 3 straight games over 100 rushing yards for Najee. Not the easiest matchup here versus the Commanders. They rank 10th best in fantasy points allowed, but they rank 25th in rushing yards and 25th in rushing touchdowns. They've been first in receptions and receiving yards. So Najee definitely can do well here versus the Commanders on the ground. He could go 4 straight games over 100 rushing yards this week. Would not be that surprising. I don't hate the Najee rushing line this week at all. This game, again, is projected to be pretty close. There might be some rain in this game, by the way. Weatherman Sam's got you. We got you all season. We haven't got to the scary weather game yet, though, and this is not one of them. There might be some rain in this game, but not enough to be concerned at all. And there's possibly no rain. as well. So I feel pretty good starting Najee this week. Pickens is also a really good option. Najee versus Pickens. I think I'd lean Najee for the floor, Pickens for the ceiling. You got to ask yourself, do you want a chance at 30-plus points? Go with Pickens. Do you want a locked-in 10-plus points? Go with Najee Harris. I think that's the way to think about it between these two guys. I personally probably lean towards Najee if I had to make that call, but Pickens has a pretty high ceiling in this game. Pickens, also one of the most underrated receivers in the NFL. George Pickens, 2.8 yards per run. That ranks top 20 in the league. His volume has been insane. He's got the fourth highest air yard share in the NFL, 10th most air yards in the NFL. His target share is 8th highest. He's got a 28% target share this season. He has a really good chance to go over 30% target share in this game. We got him projected at a 29% target share this week. Clearly meshes well with Russ. He's had over 70 yards in the last 2 Russ starts. So pretty good ceiling for Pickens. I think Najee's floor makes him a bit more compelling. And then none of these other guys can be started. You can't really start Russ. You can't start Jaylen Warren. You can't start Calvin Austin, Pat Fryman. None of these guys should be started. Van Jefferson, you don't start him either. See someone asking, what's Jonathan Brooks' value now after the Chuba extension? Yeah, so Chuba Hubbard gets extended. Then they deactivate Jonathan Brooks for this game. Finally, Tracy gets some yards on the ground. He's over 0 points now, so that's good. Hopefully they keep giving him the ball. Jonathan Brooks inactive. We're probably going to see him week 12. It's possible we don't see him this season. It's definitely possible. I mean, what is the real incentive for the Panthers? None, really. I mean, they're trying to lose. They should be trying to lose and tank. Tracy's up to 16 rushing yards now. Man, we need a lot more than that in the second half from Tracy and hopefully the rest of this first half. But yeah, I think Jonathan Brooks, I think about him the exact same way. For Dynasty, I still think he's a pretty good asset. I still think he's going to be better than Chuba Hubbard in the long term. It's not ideal, though, that Chuba Hubbard has played as well as he has and gets extended. It's probably a little bit more than like a Bijan Tyler Algier situation. It might be more like a Rashad White, Bucky Irving situation where it's a true committee. It's possible. I still think there's a ceiling, though, for Brooks. And I still think Brooks has league-winning potential in the fantasy playoffs. The playoff schedule is still very good. And that's how I've been thinking about him really since draft season. QB rankings. Yeah, I got you the QB ranks. Go to the QB ranks here on the YouTube Live as well. All right, so that's the Steelers-Commanders game. Projected to be one of the closest games of the week. Should be a fun one. I think that was the first catch of the game from Neighbors deep in the second quarter. All right, on to the next one. We got the 49ers and Bucks. This is definitely a very fun one. We got Christian McCaffrey returning. And when there is fear, there's usually opportunity just in marketplaces in general. And there's been a lot of fear about McCaffrey this season. And there was a clear league-winning opportunity in basically every single fantasy league to go get Christian McCaffrey early in this season. And I was advocating for exactly that, months ago, that Christian McCaffrey was an obvious buy in fantasy because there's just not that many guys in fantasy that you can be really confident if they are fully healthy are going to just win leagues. And McCaffrey has one of the best fantasy football playoff schedules, guys. He's coming back and he gets the Rams and the Dolphins to start the fantasy football playoffs for a difficult matchup versus the Lions. Doesn't matter though. He's matchup proof. And if he's even 80%, if McCaffrey's even 80% or close to 80% of what he's been or what he was last season, he's the best running back probably in fantasy. He was averaging 25 points per game last season. That ranked number 1 among running backs. He did not have games really under 15 fantasy points. He has wide receiver type numbers. Some weeks there's no Brandon Ayuk too. That's pretty good for McCaffrey. McCaffrey's got to start. He's got to start. You got to be started in fantasy. I mean, there's just an unwritten rule in fantasy. If you got McCaffrey and he's playing, you kind of have to start. How good will Evans be when healthy? Probably pretty good. Tyreek's a true question mark. Seeing that in the TikTok live. We'll get to that game in a bit. Lamar's not on here. This is the projections for the rest of the week. So no Lamar, no Burrow, no Chase. Anyone that's injured won't be on these rankings. This is my rankings for this week. All right, so you're starting Debo for sure. Anytime Ayuk is out, you got to start Debo. Same thing goes with Kittle. He projects clearly as the tight end 1. Guys, this Bucs defense has been atrocious. And the Bucs offense has been good enough to push these games so high scoring. Similar to the Ravens. I mean, similar situation, honestly, to the Ravens. They're like a mini Ravens where their defense and their secondary has been so bad. They rank bottom 4 in receptions allowed, second most receiving yards allowed to the tight ends this season. Basically, every single tight end they played over the last month and a half has crushed. Goddard went for 13. He was a top 5 tight end. Pitts went for 16. He was a top 6 tight end. Andrews had 20 points. He was a top 5 tight end. Pitts, again, 2 weeks ago, He had 25 points. Kelsey had 22. Kelsey just had a career high 14 catches versus this Bucs defense. I mean, Kittle has an insanely high ceiling in this game and a pretty good floor. Kittle is the fantasy tight end 1 this season. It's not that close. He's averaging 18 points per game. He has the most receiving yards in the NFL per game, over 70 yards per game. He has not had a bad game, really, all season. He didn't play in week 3. Every other game, basically, he's over 15 points. I mean, this is unreal from a tight end. Kittle's basically already the fantasy tight end. If he just has an okay rest of the season, he's the tight end 1. And he's the tight end 1 this week. He's the tight end 1 basically every week from here on out. You got to feel very good about Kittle. Why do I ever think I should start Daniel Jones at QB? Yeah, I did the same thing. I started Daniel Jones in a couple spots too. There's still some hope because he's still playing the Panthers in the second half that are not good. But I do think that the Daniel Jones and Tracy starts are not feeling great right now. One league, I had Burrow, Chase stack. So set there. Yeah, if you had Chase, if you had the Burrow, Chase stack, it's over. I've never seen a fantasy week end so fast. If you had the Burrow, Chase stack, really. But even if you just had Chase, I mean, you're starting at least a 70% win probability, like almost regardless of whatever else happened. About Laporta or Ertz, yeah, I'd go Laporta, I think, over Ertz. And Kyler or Herbert, I'd probably go Kyler over Herbert. I haven't pulled up the defense ranks yet. I've seen a defense question here too. I pulled the defense ranks here quick. I don't think I pulled those up yet. And then we'll get back to the game by game. We'll get to the Bucs side of this game. I do think that the 49ers offense rolls in this game. The 49ers coming off the bye. They're 6.5-point favorites. McCaffrey's back. He probably gets a touchdown. Also, like, what's the role for McCaffrey? Really tough to know. It's super tough to know. I think it's probably still pretty large. Probably still a pretty large role. We're projecting in the Walter Picks app. I think we're projecting him around a 60% rush share, and he projects as top 15 running back. All right. Pittsburgh Steelers. Yeah, they're definitely up there. I like the Bears, the Chargers, the Vikings, and the Lions. I had the Giants pretty high up there too. I think the Bears and the Chargers are the ideal defenses this week if you can get them. Daniels or Purdy. Yeah, I think it's Purdy over Daniels. Purdy is a must start. Really, unless you have Josh Allen, you got to start Purdy. The Bucs have been crushed this season. McCaffrey being back is good for Purdy. The Bucs are allowing the second most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks this season. Mahomes just had his first game over 20 points. Kirk Cousins has like 70 fantasy points combined, basically 60 fantasy points combined for Kirk. Over 60. He's got 64. If I do some quick mental math right, 64 points from Kirk Cousins versus the Bucs this season in 2 games. Lamar had 34 points. You got to start Brock Purdy. I mean, he's going over 20 points. He's one of the safest options QB this week for sure, especially with McCaffrey back. And then Juwan Jennings and Pearsall. These are pretty good options. I like Jennings a bit more than Pearsall, but both have an interesting ceiling in this matchup. The Bucs secondary has been really bad. They're dealing with injuries, and they were bad before the injuries. And we've seen Juwan Jennings have an incredible ceiling this season. He had 46 points back in week 3. We haven't seen him go over 12 points any week outside of that. And Pearsall's playing. It'll be interesting to see the mix between Pearsall and Jennings and what those roles shake out to be. But both are startable this week, both interesting sleepers, and they're actually both in my DraftKings lineup. I'm going with the Purdy, Jennings, Pearsall stack this week. I think it'll be a sneaky stack in this matchup. I think a lot of the 49ers stacks, though, make sense in tournaments this week. All right, on to the Bucs side of the ball. Let me go to the QB ranks here to get to this question quick, too. Kyler or Herbert? Yeah, I think it is Kyler over Herbert. The Chargers have been throwing much more. Yeah, it is Kyler over Justin Herbert. Herbert is a guy that I want to be stashing. He has a pretty good schedule coming up, too. He gets the Bengals, the Ravens, the Falcons in the next 3 weeks. I mean, these are all weeks I'm going to feel pretty good starting Herbert if I'm streaming quarterbacks. And God forbid I'm starting Daniel Jones this week, which I definitely am in at least one league. At least you can go at Herbert in a bunch of spots. But yeah, Kyler Murray's, he's got the rushing that Herbert doesn't have. He's been a bit inconsistent this season, coming off a bad game versus the Bears, but he's performed well against good defenses at times this year. I'd probably go Kyler over Herbert. The matchup versus the Titans, it could be really, really run heavy for the Chargers in that one. We'll get to that game here momentarily. But onto the Buccaneers side of the ball quick. So Baker, he's startable. I mean, Baker Mayfield, you got to give him some respect for what he's done this season. He has the second most fantasy points per game. He's leading all quarterbacks in passing touchdowns per game. He's 5th in passing yards per game. And even without Godwin and Evans the last couple of weeks, he's been balling. 24 points in week 8. He had 18 points versus the Chiefs last week, a very good Chiefs defense that he almost he almost won against. He really should have won if they went for 2. And now he gets the 49ers off the bye, another kind of tough spot against a pretty good defense off the bye. They're big underdogs in this game. There's no Mike Evans again. There's no Chris Godwin again. We haven't seen a quarterback go over 16 fantasy points since week 5. Only 2 QBs over 20 this whole season. Versus the 49ers, they haven't played the best QBs looking at this schedule. But Baker's kind of a sketchy start this week. He's a back-end QB1, though, with how he's performed and how this offense is done. Cade Otton's a must-start. He's really the only must-start on the Bucs. They're using Cade Otton like Travis Kelce right now. He's got 3 straight games with 8 catches and at least 75 receiving yards. 8 catches and 75 yards, 3 straight for Cade Otton. That's what we call on fire, where I'm from. You got to be starting Cade Otton for sure. He's out there every single snap. He leads all tight ends in snaps. He's out there every single route. He's their primary receiving weapon with these receiver injuries. And then Rachaad White, Bucky Irving, they're sketchy starts this week. You're 6.5-point underdogs. Rachaad White's got a lot of the receiving work. Bucky's got to get the bulk of the rushing work. We got Rachaad White slightly ahead in PPR and half PPR and non-PPR. I think it's probably Bucky that gets a slight edge. Bucky only had 7 carries last week, 37% rush share. Sean Tucker still mixing in slightly, but it's really a 2-headed backfield. Sean Tucker's kind of a breather back. But Rachaad White's winning in snap percentage, but he's got a lower rush share and more targets. The rules are actually pretty defined here. But yeah, I lean White with the Bucs being underdogs and Evans and Godwin being out again. Definitely expect a pretty big receiving role there still for Rachaad White. Pick 3 here. CMC, Aaron Jones, Achane, and Brees. Yeah, this is a tough call. I mean, you can't bench Achane. Absolutely no benching Achane this week. And then you got Brees Hall. He's tough to bench versus the Cardinals. Aaron Jones is really tough to bench versus the Jags. You might have to bench CMC in this one and go with Aaron Jones, Achane, and Brees. I don't think that's that crazy. CMC versus James Cook. Yeah, I'd go James Cook, I think, there too. Let me go to the running back ranks here on the TikTok Live. If you're watching live on TikTok, guys, smash the follow button. I cannot see your comment unless you follow. If you're watching live on YouTube, guys, hit the like button. It helps me out a ton more than you realize. I do appreciate it. The Giants are trying to get something going here down the stretch of the first half. They're down 10-0 versus the Panthers. I should have started Aaron Jones over Tracy. Yeah, that was definitely a tough call on Germany time. But yeah, it's seeming pretty clear you probably should have started Aaron Jones. Nico or Shakir? Yeah, I'm going Shakir. I'm not benching Shakir this week. If Nico plays, it's close. I think we actually have them back-to-back here in the wide receiver ranks. I mean, Shakir is just – there's still a chance Nico doesn't play. If Nico plays, maybe it is Nico. But you're not going to know, I don't think, before you make that decision. I'm playing Brock Purdy over Jaden Daniels. The only QB I'm playing over Brock Purdy is Josh Allen. And then it's Purdy, man. Hunt or Monty. Yeah, I'd probably cream Hunt over David Montgomery this week. This does not feel like a great spot for Monty. He's definitely still startable in a bunch of different situations. Texans have been 7th best in running back fantasy points allowed, though. They're playing in a dome. This game should be high scoring. The Lions are pretty big favorites, I think. Yeah, 3.5-point favorites, not as big as I thought. I'd probably go Hunt over Montgomery. Hill or Shakir? Yeah, I'd probably just go Shakir over Hill. We're going to get to that Dolphins game last, but Tyreek Hill's a true game time decision. True game time decision. All right, let's get to. I think that's pretty much everything on the Bucs side here. We talked through Baker Mayfield. We talked through Cade Otton being a must start. Jalen McMillan should be the wide receiver 1 this week. First time being fully healthy, I think, in that role. We saw him in week 8. He had 9 points, played 80% of snaps, 15% target share. I still think there's a ceiling with McMillan more than these other receivers, Sterling Shepard and Trey Palmer, Raheem Jarrett. These are the next receivers. But it's really Rachaad White and Cade Otton also going to get decent target shares in this game. All right, on to the Patriots-Bears game. Weatherman Sam is coming out for this one. Let's start actually there with Weatherman Sam before we get to talking through some of the actual players in this game. So Weatherman Sam's been here for you all season. And I got you today as well. There is some weather to be aware of in this Patriots-Bears game. By the way, the Bears they're at home in this one. They're 6-point favorites versus the Patriots. And this game is going to have some wind. There's going to be some wind in this Bears-Patriots game. 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts, and there's going to be light rain. Moderate concern. This is pretty similar, not exactly the same as a couple of the other weather reports we've had the last couple of weeks. where it was heavy rain. And this wind gust report, this is light rain, but similar wind report as we've had in a couple of games I called out the past couple of weeks. Wind gusts up to 30 miles an hour is concerning. The threshold of concern is 25 miles an hour, and all the research and insights I've seen about how weather impacts NFL games, some of which I've done myself. 25-mile-an-hour wind is bad. This is not sustained 30-mile-an-hour winds, though. The sustained winds are 15 to 20. So most of the game is going to be fine. There's going to be moments in the game with the wind gusts and the wind is gusting where it is difficult to throw the ball deep. This is not great for the receivers in this one. It's not great for the quarterbacks in this one. Part of the reason I think Drake May is a must bench this week is the matchup's not great, but also the weather's not great for Drake May, and the rushing potential is still there for May. I think he's still a sneaky quarterback start, but really a must bench in my mind in most situations. In most situations, I'm benching Drake May this week. DeAndre Swift, he's borderline must start. I mean, really, really good matchup here versus the Pats. The role's been really great. He's had at least 14 points in 5 straight games. He's a 6-point favorite at home in a windy game. I mean, Swift should get at least 15 carries in this one. Obviously, could be involved in the short passing game as well with the wind. DJ Moore, Dunze, Keenan, these guys are absolute headaches for fantasy. Absolute headaches. Any DraftKings sleepers? Yeah, so I think Adonai Mitchell. I haven't listed him, I don't think, yet, but we talked about him. He's 5th in targets per route run rate this season. He just hasn't run that many routes. But without Pittman, I think he's in for a season high snap percentage. I think AD Mitchell is an interesting tournament option on DraftKings and FanDuel this week. He's close to min priced. So that's the interesting one I would go with. Going back to this Bears game again, there's some scary weather in this game. 30-mile-an-hour wind gust. These receivers have been starts at nightmares really all season. I personally think Odunze is the best receiver to have amongst these three as we head down the stretch. We see rookies oftentimes come on down the stretch. I think Odunze is starting to show what I've been saying on this live stream for the last couple of weeks, that he's one of the most underrated receivers in the NFL. Maybe Devontae Smith-esque here, where he's on a team with other good, well-known receivers. But Odunze, 5 catches, 104 yards, led the team in fantasy points last week. Don't think it's crazy to think Odunze is the league winner of this group. DJ Moore's been really struggling. I don't know if you guys saw that odd play that was on video circulating this week where he just walked off the field mid-play. Seemed like he was a little bit hobbled, but then he was out there the next play. I mean, the Bears offense has really, really struggled. And part of the reason I like the Pats defense too on DraftKings this week is this weather report. I do think we could see a little bit of struggle here from Caleb Williams in this one, even though the Pats defense hasn't been very scary. DJ Moore, I still think has the highest ceiling. I would play DJ Moore over Keenan Allen. I think I'd probably go Dunze over Moore. We have all these guys projected really close though, and it's just a tough start sit scenario. At least one of these guys will bust this week, and basically every week, as long as all 3 of these guys are healthy. I mean, you're getting at least 1 bust, and probably 2 out of this group of 3 between Keenan and Dunze and DJ Moore. I don't really want to start Cole Kmet. He's fallen off the face of the earth over the last couple of weeks. He has 4 points over his last 2 games. He's 1 catch in his last 2 games. Not a bad matchup for him. He's out there, still a huge percentage of snaps, but he's not startable right now. And Roshan is a potential to steal a goal line touch and get a touchdown, but other than that, not really startable either. On the Patriots side of the ball, Drake May, I really don't want to start him. I think that Ramondre Stevenson, he can be started. He's had back-to-back games over 22 fantasy points. His efficiency has been abysmal. I mean, he's been one of the least efficient running backs in the NFL. He ranks 41st in yards per carry. He's at 2.6 yards per carry or below Ramondre Stevenson in 3 straight games. I mean, the Patriots running backs, they're just running into walls. It's been even worse for Antonio Gibson. Ramondre Stevenson, he was at 1.6 yards per carry in this one. And yeah, guys, it gets worse. I feel like it's oftentimes in analysis we're saying it can't get any worse. And somehow it can. Antonio Gibson, let me pull this up here. I think he had -1. Yeah, -1 rushing yards last week. So he's at -1 yards per carry. Look at these yards per carry numbers for Antonio Gibson. He's at 1.5 yards per carry or below in 4 straight games. I mean, you can't keep giving carries to a guy who is not able to get more than 2 yards a carry for a month. I mean, crazy stuff. He played only 8 snaps last week. He only had 1 carry. He went for -1 yards. Small sample sizes here, to be fair to Antonio Gibson, but he's barely playing. Gibson's droppable and really not startable. It's actually been JaMychal Hasty who's been the most efficient running back for the Pats over the last several weeks. I guess he didn't get a carry really the last couple of games. there's just been no efficiency in the run game. Hunter Henry, he's startable, top 10 tight end option. Demario Douglas, he's a dart throw, wide receiver 3 option. But it's really been Booty who's been the top receiver for the Pats. He did have 7 catches, Douglas, last week, back up to a 71% snap share, 23% target share. Not a terrible PPR option in this one with the Pats as 6-point underdogs. In the weather report, Booty's definitely pretty risky with the weather report as well. Daniel Jones throws a pick. We might see the end of Brian Dable very soon. 10-0 to the Panthers in Germany right now. I know I think my stream's a tiny bit behind. So, yeah, I think you got to bench May. Pop Douglas maybe benefits a bit from this weather report, but the deep receivers don't. Again, 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts in this Patriots-Bears game. All right, let's get to the next one here. I think, by the way, the Bears, 6 points at home, I probably would lean towards that. With how bad the Patriots' running game has been in a windy game, it just feels like there's not a very clear path to points for the Patriots offense in this one. This game has the lowest over-under of the week as well, 38.5 points, which makes sense given the weather report and the offenses at play here. All right, let's get to the Titans-Chargers game. So we got Titans-Chargers, Jets-Cardinals, and then just the 2 primetime games. Only 4 games left to go through, and then we are in the start-sit portion of the live stream where we grind through start-sits for several hours. Looking forward to that. All right, let's get to the Chargers game here. Definitely some starts here on the Chargers side of the ball. Again, I think Justin Herbert, very good QB stash right now for those of you streaming QBs. If you were unfortunate enough, like I was, to have to start Daniel Jones in one league, go add Justin Herbert. And I don't think he's a must start this week, but he's a must start over the next 3 weeks when he gets the Bengals and the Ravens in the weeks 11 and 12 after this week. And he gets the Falcons, he gets the Bucks in the first week of the fantasy playoffs too. I mean, he could be a league winner. The Chargers have been one of the highest teams in pass rate over expectation over the last several weeks as well. They're throwing more now, which is good for Justin Herbert. Ladd McConkey, he's starting to heat up. He's had back-to-back games over 11 fantasy points. He had 29 back in week 8. He's got at least 5 catches in 3 straight games. He is starting to produce, and he's had at least an 18% target share in every single game this season, Ladd McConkey. So if they start throwing more and these target shares are sticky, Ladd McConkey has league-winning potential. He's a pretty good start. I would start him over a lot of the options we were just talking about in that Bears-Pats game. Basically, every single Pats or Bears receiver, I would start Ladd McConkey over. This week, for example, I got the wide receiver ranks up. Let me pull the wide receiver ranks up here on the YouTube live. Guys, we are live on TikTok. We are live on YouTube. Smash the like button if you're watching live on YouTube. I do appreciate it. It helps me out a ton. If you're watching live on TikTok, guys, hit the follow button. I cannot see your comments without the follow button. Why shouldn't I play Jameson Williams? Yeah, I think Jameson Williams' floor is close to 0. It's close to 0. That's what we've seen. We're going to get to that Lions game here in a second, but I think his floor is close to 0 points. Definitely a very risky start this week, Jameson Williams. So J.K. Dobbins, he's a pretty good start in this game. The Chargers, they are 8-point favorites versus the Titans at home. They're massive favorites, and that definitely bodes well for Dobbins. Gus Edwards might be back this week, though. We've not seen Gus Edwards in a while. It'll be interesting to see how active he really is in the game plan. He wasn't very involved, really. He was pretty involved week 1 and 2. He had over 10 carries. And then the following 2 weeks, he did nothing before getting injured. I don't think we should expect a big role from Gus, but it definitely could impact Kamani Vidal. But yeah, I think Dobbins is a decent start this week. Let me switch back to the running back ranks here. Mahomes or Knicks? Yeah, I'd go Mahomes, I think, over Knicks. You cannot start Knicks versus the Chiefs. So Dobbins is a good start. McConkey's a good start. Herbert is a very good stash. And then no one else in this team can really be started other than the Chargers defense. The Bears and Chargers defense, I like the Pats defense too in that game. I think all 3 of those defenses are solid. This game actually has an even lower over-under. Actually, it's a little bit, half a point higher than the Pats-Bears game, but this also has a really low over-under in this one. Tony Pollard is a good but not must start this week. Tajay Spears is back. I like the Tajay Spears receiving line. They set this receiving line way too low. If Tajay Spears is at all healthy, at least 70% health, which he's off the injury report, I think that's fair to assume. How are they setting his receiving line less than 10 yards? The free player prop of the day is Taysom receiving, Tajay receiving, and we took the Tracy rushing which is off to a rough start in the first half. I think he's got like 20 rushing yards or something in the first half, and they're down by 10. So not great for Tracy so far. But yeah, I like the Spears receiving line. He's been over this basically every single game, full game he's played. He's averaging 15 receiving yards per game. He's a very good receiving back. The first 3 weeks of the season, he went over this, and he got hurt in that week 6 game. Week 4, he had 2 catches, no yards. So he's 3 for 4 this season, beating this line. And this is a good matchup for the running backs in the receiving game. The Chargers, they've been really good versus the run, but they're allowing the 5th most catches per game to running backs this season. They rank in the bottom 12 in terms of yards allowed. 6 catches, 42 yards allowed by the Chargers this season. So I think that bodes well for Spears in this line. I don't think Spears is a great fantasy option his first game back, but Pollard's an okay start. Ridley's an okay start too. I know Ridley feels a little gross, but he's over 12 points in back-to-back weeks. We saw a massive game in week 8 where he had 10 catches for 143, most of that in the first half. He's seeing close to 30% target shares. I mean, he's clearly the best receiver on the team. This is a tough matchup for him, but they're big underdogs again. They're going to have to throw. Will Levis is back this week. I don't think that's necessarily bad or good from what we saw with Mason Rudolph. Mason Rudolph honestly was a little bit even more effective than Will Levis. Will Levis has not been good, guys. 5.6 yards per attempt. This is Bryce Young type numbers. He ranks 36th in yards per attempt. Will Levis does. That's absolutely brutal. His completion percentage too is awful considering that yards per attempt. And then you go to Mason Rudolph here. Mason Rudolph's yards per attempt, 6.3. A little bit better than what we saw from Will Levis. So really comparable, I feel like, quarterbacks. And arguably, Mason Rudolph was actually a little bit better. I still think the ceiling's probably a little higher for Will Levis, but none of these receivers can be started other than Ridley. I think Ridley's a sneaky start still, and a sneaky option in tournaments still too, with the 30+% target share that he can achieve. Good morning, Sam. Pick 3, Dell, Mondre, Mooney, London. Yeah, this is a tough one. I think you probably want to start Tank Dell in London here. Yeah, I would probably go Tank Dell and Mooney over Mondre. I don't feel great about the Pats offense just in general. We're at halftime now in the London time game. Fix the internet there on the TikTok live. All right, we talked through the Pats game. We talked through the Chargers game. Let's get to, I think there's only 2 or 3 games left. Yeah, we got the Jets, Cardinals, and then 2 primetime games. And there's a lot to talk through in those 2 primetime games with Tyreek and Nico. We already talked about Amari. I think Amari is likely to be inactive. Let me refresh, make sure we've got no new news on any of that before we get to this Jets-Cardinals game here momentarily. Shout out to everybody in this live stream right now. Seriously, guys, I appreciate you all so much. I look forward to these Sunday morning lives all week. It's week 10. We are heading towards the fantasy playoffs. These are crucial weeks. A lot of difficult start sits this week. I'm sorry if I told you to start Daniel Jones this morning. We still got at least another half to struggle through that one. Jalen McMillan, he's officially playing. Nico Collins and Tyreek, still very much question marks. Tyreek Hill does have a long history of playing through injuries, missing practice, and playing. Daniel Jones has 54 passing yards and an interception at halftime versus the Panthers. Under 50% completion percentage. I mean, Dable is on the chopping block. There's a real chance Bryce Young terminates two coaches in a row if he wins. I mean, crazy stuff. All right, let's get to the Jets here. So there's a lot of good fantasy options for the Jets. Breece Hall's a must start. Garrett Wilson's a must start. Devontae Adams is a must start. I'm eating the L right now for my Garrett Wilson take post Adams trade. I really thought the target share would go down for Wilson. He was out targeted for the first time by Adams last week, but it hasn't mattered. I mean, it really has opened things up for Garrett Wilson, like a lot of people expected. I didn't think the efficiency boost for Wilson, I thought there was going to be a target share decline and maybe a small efficiency boost that wouldn't make up for that target share decline. We've seen no target share decline, and the efficiency has been boosted for Garrett Wilson with defenses needing to also plan for Devontae Adams and cover Devontae Adams. Coming off a 30-point game, he had back-to-back games over 16 fantasy points. Now he gets the Cardinals. Not a bad matchup here versus the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals are allowing the 6th most receptions per game to receivers this season. Both Garrett Wilson and Adams are pretty much must starts. We got Garrett Wilson as a top 10 receiver and Adams as a top 15 receiver this week. I would play Downs over Debo, seeing that comment in the TikTok live. I don't think Jamarcus Robinson's a good option with Puka and Kupp both active and unlikely to get ejected this week. Breece Hall is really a must start. I know a lot of people were panicking on Breece Hall earlier in the season. He's now had back-to-back games, bad stretch again with back-to-back bad games under 12 fantasy points, but he still went over 70 rushing yards in both those games. Breece Hall still has one of the best roles in the NFL. He's playing over 70% of the snaps. He's getting a massive rush share, and the target shares are pretty consistently at least 12%. He's got the 4th highest target share. He's got the 2nd most targets per game among running backs this season. And the rush share has been really, really high. His rush share is 7th highest, and his targets are 2nd highest. I mean, the role is massive. One more thing. I was just offered CJ for Tua. Should I do that? Probably. With Nico back, you probably should. Guess the Ravens. I mean, tough first 2 matchups here. I guess this matchup versus the Dolphins is not that scary because should be high-scoring games. And then Tua, I think he has. Yeah, I'd probably take CJ over Tua. It's close though. I prefer Tua this week for sure. JMO or Worthy, that's a tough one. We're about to get to this Lions game here. We just talked through the Jets side of that game. So we're starting Breece, we're starting Garrett Wilson, and we're starting Devontae Adams. That's pretty straightforward. I don't hate Aaron Rodgers. He's a back-end QB1. He brings QB13. Like him versus Mahomes, I think is actually pretty close. I might lean Rodgers there. I don't want to start Conklin. And Braylon Allen is just a upside stash, a worthwhile upside stash. Guys, if you're just joining the YouTube live, smash the like button, hit the subscribe button. We're almost at the start-sit segment of this live stream. What's wrong with May today? There's 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts in that Bears-Pats game. I do not want to start Drake May this week at all. All right, let's get to the Cardinals real quick. So James Conner, he is borderline must start this week. He's dealing with a finger injury. I think the under on the James Conner reception line and receiving yards line is pretty interesting in this game because of that. We had a situation like this last year where A.J. Dillon was dealing with a finger injury and they posted reception lines for him. And it was like pretty clear they had absolutely zero intention. They were actually purposefully not throwing the ball to A.J. Dillon last year when he had a finger injury. Could see something similar here. He did have 3 catches last week for 12 yards. He's had a decent receiving role this season. James Conner is a borderline must start, though, in this game with the role he's had. Over 100 yards last week, at least 18 carries in 3 straight games. His rush share did go down last week by a decent margin from the 2 weeks before. No reason to think that's going to be very sticky. Trey Benson scored last week. It looked pretty good. I still think Trey Benson has league-winning upside. They both have a great schedule in the fantasy playoffs. Kyler is startable, but not a must-start this week. Trey McBride's borderline must-start this week, as usual. Pull up the tight end ranks here on both live streams. Trey McBride ranks as tight end 4. Trey McBride still unarguably has the best role among all tight ends. He's first in target share. He's first in air yard share. He's third in total targets per game. He's been balling, man. I mean, he really has not had a bad game. At least 10 points in 5 straight games. He's one of the safest tight ends in all of fantasy. He only had 3 catches last week, but sort of rushing touchdown to save his fantasy day. Not the best matchup versus the Jets, but a must start. Unless you have Kittle, Kelsey, Otten, you got to go with McBride. I'm playing McBride over Kincaid. I'm playing him over Taysom. Shakir, Brian Thomas, yeah, Shakir. You got to start Shakir this week. I do not think Amari Cooper plays. I don't. I think this game, by the way, Jets versus Cardinals, Jets are 1.5 point favorites in this one. I think the Jets probably take this against the Cardinals in Arizona. Should be a competitive game. That's the closest spread of the week until we get to this Monday night game. Another 2 close games, primetime games here this week. All right, on to the Lions and Texans. So the Lions, Amon-Ra St. Brown has to be started. Really good spot for him. Jahmyr Gibbs and Monty, good starts. I prefer Gibbs over Monty. I know Monty's been better of late. I think just last week he was a bit better, 12.6 and 14.9 the last couple of games for Monty compared to 14.6. Yeah, I mean, really actually not that much better. Gibbs has been on a roll, man. I mean, he had 32 points back in week 7. He is the more matchup-proof running back. Both these guys are pretty matchup-proof, though, behind this offensive line. I don't want to start Sam Laporta at all this week. I really think he's a very risky start. He's on my must-bench list. This week, I'd much prefer Taysom Hill over Sam Laporta. A very weird season, man. we've seen from Laporta basically every week this season, all but 3, over half of the weeks this season would have been the worst week of Laporta's season last year as a rookie. I mean, he didn't have games with 1 catch or 2 catches last year. He had maybe 1 of them. He's had now 5 games this season with 2 catches or fewer. I mean, the world is just not the same, man, for Laporta. Even in these games without Jameson Williams, he did have 6 catches back in week 8. Very odd stuff. I mean, snap percentage is fine. The targets just have not been consistent enough for Laporta. And the Texans rank number 1 in fantasy points allowed to tight ends. A lot of that's matchup based. They have not played very good tight ends this season. Tucker Kraft, he managed to get 12 points a few weeks ago versus them. So it's not like there's no potential here for Laporta, but I'd much rather play Taysom than Laporta. Goff, I really don't love him this week. The Texans, they've oddly allowed the 3rd fewest passing yards, but they've allowed some of the most passing touchdowns. 2 passing touchdowns per game, but only 200 yards allowed per game by the Texans. Very interesting dynamic there. I think Goff has a decent touchdown ceiling in this game, but not a great passing yard ceiling in this game. I think he's a quarterback to avoid if you can. I do think you can trust Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers versus Mahomes is close. We'll talk about Nico here in a second. So Jameson Williams, too, we'll mention him quick. This is not a bad matchup on paper for Waymo J-Mo, but he had less than a point last time he played. He's had now 2 games this season under 2 points. His last 4 games, he doesn't have a game with more than 3 catches. Like, he's kind of like this big play / touchdown dependent fantasy option, or he's a boom bust option. That's what you're getting with Waymo J-Mo. A little bit different than what we thought the first 2 weeks of the season. After the first 2 weeks of the season, he had 5 catches both those games. Ever since, he has not had a game more than 3 catches. He still had multiple games over 70 yards and with a touchdown. So the ceiling's there for Jameson Williams in this one, but the floor is not there for him at all. And then for the Texans, I think Nico Collins plays. Nico Collins is a true question mark in this game. There was an early report yesterday that he was going to play, and then they walked that back and said he's actually a true game time decision. He has not gotten the full practice in yet. This is a hamstring injury. He's been on IR. He's missed the last 4 games. He has not played since week 5. Guys, Nico Collins has the 2nd most fantasy points per game among receivers. He's leading all receivers in receiving yards per game. If Nico Collins plays, you need to start Nico Collins. And I think Nico Collins plays. And I think you should probably risk it with some of these tougher fantasy start-sit decisions with both Nico and Tyreek. I think they're both probably worth risking it for. You got to make your own judgment call with who the other option is and how likely you think you are to win your matchup. You know, if you had Jamar Chase, for example, on Thursday night, you know, I am more likely then to sit Nico and Tyreek and make sure I don't take zeros and blow a big lead. But I think Nico is like 60 to 70% chance to play in my mind. And I think Tyreek is like slightly above 50%, but he does have a long history of playing through injuries. So I think you probably go Nico and Tyreek in a lot of different difficult start sits this week. Again, I think Nico, I think people just forgot a little bit what Nico has been so far this season. Again, 2nd in fantasy points per game at 21.3, number 1 in receiving yards per game at 113 yards per game. There's no Steph Diggs now. Those were all with Steph Diggs and Tank Dell in the lineup. Tank Dell's still a good start too. I do think Shakir is really better than Devontae Smith, yes, with all the Bills receiver injuries. Mixon's a must start. Nico's a must start. Stroud is an okay option with Nico back, but he's really only had 1 game over 20 points this whole season. Stroud, I guess, is actually a slightly bad option. I probably would go Rodgers over Stroud. I think that one's pretty close. Mahomes for Stroud. I think that one's pretty close. I think Tank Dell and Nico, they're both starts. Mixon's a must start regardless of matchup. Schultz definitely takes a bit of a hit with Nico back. Schultz still has no games over 10 points. Definitely would prefer Taysom over him. And I think if you risk it with Nico, add John Mechie or add Xavier Hutchinson as your backup plan for the game tonight. Probably Mechie. Mechie played 63% of snaps, did nothing. I think he had a donut there we just saw. And then Hutchinson played a little bit more, also had a donut. I think Mechie's ceiling's a tiny bit higher. Hutchinson's maybe a little bit more likely to play or be out there more. But I think those are the best backup options if you risk it with Nico. And I think Nico plays, and I think he's worth the risk. I think there's a better than not chance that we do see Nico Collins play tonight for the first time since week 5. Tank or Addison, half PPR. It's got to be Tank, man. Got to be Tank. Hey, Sam. Marv Riddell, full PPR, 100-yard, 5-point bonus. Yeah, I think it's Tank over Marv, too. Let's do that one quick. Yeah, it's Tank over Marv. Pretty tough matchup here for Marv. We got him projected just under 10 points. BTJ or Hopkins? Yeah, I think I'd probably go Brian Thomas. Oh, man, it's a tough call. The matchup's so good for Brian Thomas. It's really scary for Hopkins. The role is probably better for Hopkins. Obviously, the quarterback's better for Hopkins. It's a floor ceiling decision here. I usually chase the ceiling. I have a tendency to chase the ceiling. In the Walter Picks app, we got Hopkins with an even higher ceiling. It's not that crazy given what we saw last week. I think it actually is Hopkins here. It's tough to bench BTJ in this matchup. We're benching Pitts because he's a 0-point floor. We have not seen Pitts have a huge role for like a month now. Morning, Sam. Tracy killing me out the gate. Yeah, me as well. There's no one who needs Tracy more than I do right now. I got him in multiple leagues. I have his player props as well today. Hopefully he picks it up in the second half. I don't know what the exact stat line is for him right now. Let me pull that up, actually. I think he had maybe 20 rushing yards, 40. At least he hit up 40. He's over halfway to the rushing prop line, at least. I didn't see a couple of those carries clearly. Man, there's only 3 players with a catch for the Giants. Wandell has 3 catches for 23. Daniel Jones, only 54 yards and 6 completions with a pick. Versus the Panthers is absolutely brutal, man, in Germany this morning. Ramondre or Connor, PPR? It's Connor over Ramondre for sure. Yeah, Eckler or Najee. That one's pretty close. Eckler was in like a 3-way committee last week. I think it's possible we see that again. Najee's got 3 straight games over 100 rushing yards. It could go 4 straight today. I think you go Najee. Amari Cooper, I don't think he's going to play. I do think Tyreek's going to play. I do think Nico's going to play. I do not think Amari's going to play. And part of the reason I think that is they activated 2 receivers from the practice squad yesterday. Conquer Downs. It's Downs. It's got to be Downs. All roads lead to Josh Downs. Without Michael Pittman, they're big underdogs. They're 4-point underdogs versus the Bills. All right, let's get to the last game now. So we talked through the Texans. We talked through the Lions. Last game, the Dolphins and the Rams. This game's going to be a fun Monday night game. Tough situation for people with Tyreek Hill. I think he's going to play. I think it's pretty close to 50%. So there's a lot of risk. He hasn't practiced this week since the injury flared up, at least. It's a wrist injury, I believe, for Tyreek. It's a wrist injury for Amari, too. But yeah, I think you got to risk it with Tyreek. I think he probably plays. And if he plays, he's a top 10 wide receiver option. Tua is a pretty good option, too. The Rams have their offensive line back. The Rams are going to be able to score in this game. And the Dolphins they got their offensive line back. The Rams have their receivers back. This game has one of the highest over-unders of the week. The Rams are 1.5-point favorites at home. Tua's going to be forced to throw in this game, and I think we probably see one of his best fantasy games of the season. We have not seen Tua go over 20 points yet this year, but we've been seeing quarterbacks do that versus the Rams. We saw Kyler, Purdy, and Geno all went over 25 versus the Rams this season. Darnold at 18, Love at 17. I think that's close to the floor for Tua in this game. A pretty good quarterback option this week. If I hop over to the QB ranks quick on both live streams, not very many QBs I'd want to start more than Tua. Darnold, Jalen Hurts, Jaden Daniels, Purdy, and Allen. That's it. End of list. That is Tua. I'd play Tua over Pat Mahomes, over Stafford. I would have played him over Daniel Jones in this game. I think I was talking about that one before this Germany time game and thought it was pretty close. Obviously, in retrospect, you're playing Tua there. I'm playing Tua over Kyler, over Baker, over Kirk. I don't think you should bench Tyreek. I think Tyreek's probably going to play, but it is a true question mark. There is risk there, and you gotta feel out the situation in your league and to figure out what makes sense. If you have a huge lead, maybe you don't risk it with Tyreek. If it's close, I think you probably do risk it with Tyreek. I think he probably plays. You're going to want backup options here as well. There's not that many great ones. Demarcus Robinson's maybe one I don't feel great about this week. Odell maybe is a backup option if Tyreek sits. I think Waddle is being slept on right now in fantasy, and understandably so. He's been under 10 points every single game since week 1. I think the talent, though, it's still there with Waddle. We've seen it in the past. Like it's not like this is a whole different player. He had 70 yards per game through the air last season, and he only has one game over 70 yards in the air this season. But he gets a really good matchup versus the Rams this week. Tyreek's banged up. I think there's a massive ceiling here for Waddle on Monday night. I don't think he's a bad start this week at all. I do believe Nico's going to play. I do believe Tyreek's going to play. I don't believe Amari's going to play. That is all my speculation. These are not guaranteed things that I think. There's percentages involved here. I think a close to 50% chance that Tyreek plays. I lean towards him playing. I think there's a close to 70% chance Nico plays. I lean towards him playing. I think there's an under 30% chance Amari plays. I lean towards him sitting. Part of the reason I really like Shakir. I'm going downs over McConkey, yeah, for sure. Yeah, Achane is likely going to explode in this game. Achane projects as running back 3. I think it's only Saquon. It's Saquon and Kamara. That's it. Those are the only 2 running backs over Achane. Achane is in such a good role when Tua plays. He's putting up receiver-like numbers. It feels a lot like what we've seen from McCaffrey in the past. It's like McCaffrey without quite as big of a rushing role and sort of snap percentage. He actually had a season high or a high in the past month snap percentage. Last week, 69%, a nice 69% snap percentage for Achane. Ran a route on a season high 75% of dropbacks. Back-to-back games with 8 targets. I mean, he's putting up wide receiver numbers with 2. He's got the second most catches per game, second most yards per game, only behind Alvin Kamara through the air. And a couple of those games, were without Tua. If you look at the Tua games, he might actually be ahead of Kamara in the receiving numbers. Not a scary matchup really here versus the Rams. And yeah, massive, massive ceiling for Achane. We've seen the ceiling before. We saw it last week. We've seen it 2 straight weeks, really. 3 different times this season, we've seen Achane go over 26 fantasy points. So yeah, you got to feel pretty good about Achane in this one for sure. The Waddle, I think, is a pretty good option. I think Tyreek plays. I think you want to start Tyreek if he plays. He doesn't play till Monday night. I'm willing to risk it with Tyreek in most spots this week. Mostert, I think, is a bench this week. I think he's pretty risky. He didn't score last week. Did have 56 rushing yards. He's the clear running back 2. I think Jalen Wright probably steadily gets a little bit more involved and eats away at that role. 5.6 yards per carry. He fumbled, though. He's now had brutal fumbles, Mostert, in 2 of the last 3 games. Marv or Waddle, yeah, that one's pretty close, man. I think it's pretty close. And with the chance, this projection in the Walter Picks app's assuming that Tyreek's playing. And there's a chance he does not play. Again, I'm willing to risk it there. And I do think he plays. But yeah, I'm playing Waddle over Stevenson. I think Waddle over Marv is fine. I do. I think it's fine. I think I probably would go Waddle over Marv, thinking through this one. Shakir Downs. Yeah, I think it's Shakir over Downs. We have them both ranked really high. Yeah, we have Shakir at wide receiver 5 and Downs at wide receiver 7 with their projected roles today. Both really good options. Both sneaky values on DraftKings, on FanDuel. Both pretty good prop opportunities. Who dat? I got you with the DraftKings and the props. So there's 3 free player props today. One of them's already going on and was off to a rough start, but it's going to probably be close. And that was the Tyrone Tracy rushing line on Germany time this morning. Then we got the Taysom Hill over receiving yards. We cashed in the Taysom Hill touchdown last week. And Taysom's going to be in a huge role again today with the receiver options that the Saints have. Taysom is their second best weapon after Alvin Kamara. It's him, it's Juwan Johnson, it's Mason Tipton. We were talking through, we're going to see out there for the Saints, the top receivers, wide receivers for the Saints today. Mason Tipton, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Dante Pettis, someone named Jermaine Jackson, and someone named Kevin Austin Jr. That's the Saints receiver room. It actually might be the worst receiver room in NFL history that I've ever seen. And that's saying something. We've seen some bad ones. And then I also like Tajay Spears' receiving line. He's playing a defense this week that's allowed top 5 in receptions per game allowed. And he's had at least 2 catches in basically every fully healthy game this year. I just think this receiving line is way too low for Spears, who can do this in the first quarter. CMC or Kyron Williams? Yeah, I'm going Kyron. There's not that many running backs I'm playing over CMC. I want to start CMC if I have him. You kind of have to start him, in most leagues. But I'm playing James Conner over. I think I'd probably go McCaffrey over Conner. I'd play Aaron Jones, though, over McCaffrey. I'd play James Cook, pretty solid. Tyrone Tracy, I would have played over McCaffrey. Jonathan Taylor, Joe Mixon, I'd play over McCaffrey. Bijan, Kyron Williams, Achane, Saquon, and Kamara. These are the guys I'm playing over McCaffrey. On to the Rams side of this game. Kyron Williams is a must start. He's got the best role in the NFL. He has the best role in the NFL among running backs. He ranks first in snaps. He ranks first in snap percentage. He's averaging the most. He's third most carries, and he's also gets 3 targets a game. You got to feel very good about Kyren. They got multiple starting offensive linemen coming back too in this game. The Dolphins have not been great versus running backs this season. Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp both are must starts. Tight end rankings today. I got you. Got you with the tight end ranks. And then I think DeMarcus Robinson's a must bench. I know he had a great game last week, 27.4 points for DeMarcus Robinson, ranked as wide receiver 5, 94 yards, 6 catches, 2 TDs. Puka Nacua got ejected in this one, though, and that definitely played a role in this performance from DeMarcus Robinson. I think the floor is 0 points, like very close to 0 points for DeMarcus Robinson. Sure, there maybe is a ceiling in what could be a high-scoring game, projected to be a high-scoring game, but yeah, I'm okay benching DeMarcus Robinson after a big game last week. I think the Dolphins compete in this game, especially if Tyreek plays, but the Rams are going to be tough to beat with their offensive line healthy and with the receivers healthy. I think I'd lean towards the Rams side of this game. They're 1.5 point favorites at home in this one. I think they should probably be favored by a little bit more than that, especially if Tyreek ends up sitting. And again, I think Tyreek plays, and I think Nico plays too. QB ranks, I got you. All right. That was every game, every relevant player from every game. My thoughts on every relevant player in every game and what I expect to happen in that game are in the books. We're heading towards the start-sit segment of this live stream. No need to spam. I'm going to get to as many comments as I possibly can get to over the next couple of hours. And there goes Tracy. He's in. Let's go. Tracy, massive touchdown for the Giants, trying to keep Brian Dable's job alive. I don't know how long that was, but he's got to be close to the rushing line now. He had 40 yards at halftime. Love to see it. Tyron Tracy getting in the end zone. Massive, massive touchdown for fantasy. That was like a 20-ish yard run, 25-yard run. Starts it, Nico or Downs. Yeah, so I think Nico plays, but there's a few receivers with Nico and Tyreek where you just start. Like they're good enough options this week. They're close enough in projection to Nico and Tyreek. Like Shakir and Downs. You start Shakir and Downs. In basically all leagues, you got to find a spot to start them. Tracy, OMG, let's go. Did that cash the line? I don't know. It was a run, I think. He did just cash. Wow. 84 yards and a touchdown now on the ground. Let's go. Tyrone Tracy. We're 1 for 1 on the free player props already today. You love to see it. Tracy over 71.5 rushing yards. It's early third quarter. He started slow. It's still 84 yards TD. The Panthers run defense is so bad. And then we got Taysom receiving, Tajay receiving as well today. Feeling good about those. Hope you guys were riding the Germany time prop with Tracy. It started scary. It's ending strong. Daniel Jones still looking rough for fantasy, but at least this game is starting to heat up, and Tyrone, a pretty good start this week. Dobbins or Hunt, full PPR. Yeah, this one's close. All right, we're into the start-sit segment, guys, where I'm going to try to answer as many start-sits as I can possibly answer over the next hour and a half. I love this part of the live. I'm going to tell you all the information I think you would want to make those start-sits. I'll tell you probably what I would do, but ultimately it's your call, guys, and you got to make your own decisions. That's the fun part of fantasy. I'm just here to help you make those decisions as best as possible. Hit the like button if you guys are watching live on YouTube. Hit the follow button if you're watching live on TikTok. I will not see your comment if you are not following. That's just how it works on the TikTok lives. I don't make the rules. Amari Cooper out. I think Amari Cooper will be out. I don't know if that's been officially reported yet. I don't think I've seen that. Oh, inactive today. Yep, 6 minutes ago. Amari Cooper is officially inactive. So we're 1 for 1 on the injury calls. 2, I didn't think Amari Cooper was going to play, and that's confirmed. That's part of the reason Khalil Shakir is an absolute must start. He projects as a top 10 wide receiver this week. He actually ranks number 5 in our wide receiver ranks right now. This Colts-Bills game is projected to be pretty close. It's only a 4-point spread, which is pretty surprising to me. That's like that spread and this Giants spread. Those are the 2 most surprising spreads to me. The Giants were favored by 9 points in this game, guys. And I guess there's still a chance they cover that, but I mean, pretty crazy in retrospect. And the Bills, they're now 4.5 point favorites. It's actually gone a little bit towards them, but Amari's out. Keon Coleman's out. So it's Shakir, it's Kincaid, it's James Cook. These 3 guys are going to have a massive role in this game. And Josh Allen's still more than capable of destroying this sort of subpar Colts defense. All right, let's do Dobbins and Hunt. Sorry, I got sidetracked there when I started talking about start-sit segment. All right, we got Dobbins versus Hunt. I think it's probably Hunt. Yeah, it's Hunt. The Chiefs are 8.5-point favorites. The Chargers are 8-point favorites. So you got two massive favorites, which is great for the running backs for sure. I play Khalil over basically everybody. Yeah, I'm playing him over Lamb. I don't feel great benching Lamb, but I think it's reasonable to do this week with all the injuries for the Bills receivers. Good matchup for Khalil. Yeah, so it's Hunt over Dobbins. Hunt is just the safer option. Gus Edwards is going to be back this week, most likely. He's actually questionable. I think he's maybe one of the last question marks we're waiting for in the early window. And this is not in the early window, so we won't get that. But yeah, I think I'd go Hunt over Dobbins. I do think Tyreek plays this week, but it's like a 50-50 chance. 50-50. I think Nico plays this week. I think that's like a 70-30 chance. I think both are worth the risk, though, of starting. I'm playing Devontae, I think, over Hunt in PPR. God, I feel like Hunt probably projects better. There are so many running backs this season projecting so well. I mean, the running backs have been the better option in the flex like all season. And yeah, look, Hunt projects a bit better than Devontae. Devontae's got a slightly higher ceiling, actually a much higher ceiling. So he's worth considering here. Parker Washington or Jalen McMillan. I'd probably go McMillan with Mac and Cheese Mac Jones starting. Mahomes, Stafford, Russ. God, this one might be, let me go to the QB ranks here. Mahomes, Stafford, and then Russ is down below. Yeah, honestly, I think I'd probably go Stafford over Mahomes. I got Mahomes one spot ahead in the QB ranks here, but I think I'd probably go Stafford over Mahomes. Mahomes had his first game over 20 points last week, but now he gets the Broncos. Much worse matchup. I think much more likely to be a run-heavy game script for the Chiefs. Sup, Sam? How we doing, Mr. Denora? Flex full PPR, ETN, Bucky, or Dunze? Yeah. It's not ETN. I mean, can't start ETN. He's a must bench, I think, in that game between the Jags and the Vikings. And the Vikings have been a really tough spot for running backs this season. He's already splitting work with Tank Bigsby. Bucky Irving's in a really rough spot versus the 49ers. Adunze's in a good matchup versus the Pats, but that game has 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts. Weatherman Sam's here for you with that game weather report. 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts in that game. Some light rain too. I think I'd lean Bucky in this one. Let's do this comparison though. I bet Adunze might project the best here. I think I personally would go Bucky though. Adunze does project the best here. Close call. I think I'd probably lean Bucky with the weather report, but it's not crazy to go Adunze either. He does project a bit better. George Pickens or Puka? Yeah, it's Puka. You got to start Puka. You got to start him. Shakir or Dell, it's Shakir. You got to start Shakir too. You got to start Shakir. You got to start Downs. Have to start them both. I'm playing Shakir over basically everybody. Like basically everyone. We have Shakir projected ahead of Amon-Ra. And I don't know if I'd do that one. That feels a little bit aggressive. But Shakir's been really good, guys. I mean, the floor for Shakir has been high. He's got at least 6 catches in 3 straight games. And now Keon Coleman and Amari Cooper are out. Taysom or Bucky? Yes, it's Taysom. It's Taysom or Bucky for sure. Taysom's got the better chance at multiple touchdowns, I think, than Bucky. Got the running back ranks up. Let me pull those up. Let me know in the comments too which position you guys want to see next for the rankings I'm displaying. I can always switch it up based on what people are looking for. London or Collins? God, I think you risk it with Collins. Is Nico playing for sure? Nope, not for sure. Tight end, yeah, I got you. Taysom's the tight end again, the good tight end option off the waiver this week. I also think Hunter Henry, pretty good option off the waiver wire this week. I got the Taysom Hill receiving line as one of my free player props today, over 18.5 yards. Tyreek or Collins? Yeah, it's Collins over Tyreek. I think it's more likely Collins plays than Tyreek. They're both game time decisions. You are not going to know for a lot of your start-sit decisions if Tyreek and Collins are definitely in. I think they're likely to play. I think they're worth the risk too in most situations. It depends. If you have a big lead, I think that changes a bit. I'm playing Taysom over Evan Ingram, even more so in half PPR. Taysom has a much better chance at multiple touchdowns compared to Evan Ingram. Should I pick up and play Ray Davis over Bucky Irving or ETN? Good call on Cooper. He was just ruled inactive. Thanks as always. Yeah, Cooper's out. That was my lean based on the elevations from the practice squad yesterday. We have not seen those yet for the Chiefs. Sorry, for the Dolphins and for the Texans. Part of the reason I think Tyreek and Nico are going to play, but we haven't got that report yet for the Dolphins yet. I don't think they've had to rule that yet. I would go Bucky here over Ray Davis. Ray Davis for CTN's close. I mean, ETN's just a gross guy to have to try to start in fantasy right now with Mac and Cheese Mac Jones starting. Tank Bigsby stealing a lot of the rushing work away. Let's compare these three guys, though, on the YouTube Live. We're live on TikTok and YouTube right now, by the way, guys. If you're watching live on TikTok, I'm telling you, I'm not just saying this, that the YouTube Live is a better viewing experience. I can share my screen on the YouTube Live. I can't do that on the TikTok Live. Link to the YouTube Live is right in the TikTok bio. Shout out to everybody, though, in both live streams right now. All right, we're going to compare Ray Davis, Bucky Irving, and ETN. I personally lean Bucky here. Walter agrees with me. Walter's the AI model, by the way, that powers the Walter Picks app that I helped build over the last 4 years. Best app you could possibly find for fantasy advice, for player prop insights. Why is Taysom projected so high? Because Mason Tipton and Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Dante Pettis are the top receiving options. I think ETN is a must drop at this point. Yeah, I think I actually said that in the takeaways last week. I thought that ETN is droppable as well. Big run there from Bryce Young. But yeah, I'll go Bucky Irving, then ETN, then Ray Davis. Ray Davis had a huge catch last week. Ray Davis is one of the highest upside bench stashes. I think he's in that Braylon Allen, at least close to that Braylon Allen tier. We saw a big workload back in week 6. He had 97 rushing yards and 55 receiving yards in that game. He's a capable receiving back. He's a good running back. He's been over 11 points in 3 of his last 4 games. But it's still the James Cook show. I still think Bucky Irving's a safer option. Bo Nix or Russ? That's pretty close, actually. I think it's probably Russ. Yeah, we got Russ at 1 tier above Nix, even though they're back-to-back in the ranks. McLaurin or London? I really don't want to bench London. I really don't. I think McLaurin might project a bit better while they're back-to-back here. Yeah, it's London. It's London over McLaurin. I do think that this makes sense given the matchups. This is a good matchup for the Falcons offense this week. I would go George Pickens over Tank. Yo, Sam, pick 3. Matthew Freeman, how we doing? Why is everyone spamming? No need to spam in the YouTube Live. We're going to get to hundreds more of the start-sit questions. I'm going to get to as many as I possibly can. As many as I possibly can. I was here in the last live also. I've been waiting for my question. David, I got you. I try to get to as many as I can. I feel like I always see those comments too, and then I don't actually see the question. Pitts, Waddle, ETN, Bigsby. Yeah, so I'm going Bigsby over ETN. I'm playing Waddle there too. It's Bigsby in Waddle there. I don't think I'd play Pitts over Bigsby. It's kind of a gross decision there, but I would definitely go Waddle. All right, Pickens, Gibbs, Kupp, Marv, Hopkins. Pick 3 here, Brees. So you're starting Brees. You're starting Kupp, and I think you start Gibbs. You bench Pickens and Hopkins here. Play Brees, Gibbs, and Kupp, and then pick one. Hawkinson, or Ferguson. Switch back to the tight end ranks here quick. Yeah, it's Berg. I think it's Berg over Hawk. It's close. It's definitely a really close call. They project really close together. We got Hunter Henry projected for 10.5. So we got Hawkinson projected for 10.5, and we got Ferguson projected for it's 10.6 versus 10.4. Super close. Ryan, thanks for doing the TikTok live subscription. I will get to all TikTok live subscriber comments by the end of the live stream. These guys are super, super close. The better matchup for Hawkinson than Ferguson. Man, I kind of almost want to say it's Hawkinson, though, looking at the matchups here. I think Ferguson's floor is maybe a little bit safer. And David Moore scores versus the Giants. I mean, gross stuff. Killer, and yeah, it's Kittle. You can't bench Kittle this week. No benching Kittle. Guys, do not bench Kittle. He's by far the best tight end option of the week. I don't think it's that close. I think it is Hawk over Ferg. I think I would change this. I would go Hawk over Ferg. Super close. But I think the matchup is better for Hawkinson, assuming the Jags can keep this game somewhat close. Do I trade CeeDee Lamb, and if so, for who? No, I think you hold on to CeeDee Lamb still. I still think he's probably underpriced based on the Dak news. He still has a really good schedule in the fantasy playoffs. Bucks, Eagles, and Panthers. He got a good schedule just in general. I still think the targets will probably be there for Lamb. Kincaid, Taysom, or DJ Moore for flex. I've Otten at tight end already. It's probably Kincaid here over DJ Moore. It's going to be close. I would play Kincaid over Taysom. I got them back-to-back in the ranks. I think it's really close there. Downs, Debo, and Tyreek start too. Yeah, it's like in spots like that, I think you should go Downs and Debo. I think it's fine. Those are both top 12 options. I think Tyreek probably plays but there's a real chance he doesn't. Yeah, it's Kincaid over DJ Moore. It's Kelsey over Otten. It's Kittle, then Kelsey, then Otten. That's the top three. Debo, Shakir, or CD. I got Otten in a flex. Yeah, Shakir. I think it's Shakir. Start Shakir. In basically all spots, you got to start Shakir with all these injuries for the Bills receivers. Why we're benching Laporta? Because he's got 3 catches or fewer in over half his games this season. James Conner, Hunt, or Dobbins. I got you, Matt. I think this one's probably Hunt or Conner. I'm a little bit skittish on Conner this week with the finger injury. I'm scared that he won't catch any passes. I honestly think it's Hunt. Even though Conner projects a bit better, I think I would go Hunt over Conner. I feel a little bit safer about that. Ingram or Hawk PPR? I think we got Ingram slightly ahead of Hawk. Yeah, I think it's Evan Ingram with the injuries. Good morning. We've been on Germany time today. Wow, what a catch there by David Moore. He's balling versus the Giants. Aaron Jones, Breece Hall, Jahmyr Gibbs, or Swift pick 2. Weatherman Sam Hatt's coming off here. The weather report, by the way, today is 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts in the Patriots-Bears game. Very scary for those offenses and those passing attacks, for sure. McCaffrey or Swift? Yeah, I'd probably go McCaffrey there. Billy, I got you with the receiver ranks. We're in the start-sit segment of the live, guys. I'm going to get to as many starts as I can over the next hour or so. We got a great banger of a football game on our TV screens right now between the Panthers and the Giants, and Brian Dable's job is on the line. The coach terminator is looking for a second straight coach termination in 2 weeks. All right, Aaron Jones, Breece Hall, Gibbs, or Swift pick 2. Yeah, so it's Breece Hall and Aaron Jones, I think, over Gibbs and Swift this week. All very, very good options, though. I go to the running back ranks here. I'll go to the running back ranks here next. And yeah, it's Aaron Jones. I think I'd probably move James Conner down here a little bit after talking through the finger injury a little bit more on this live stream. I would go McCaffrey, Swift, Gibbs, and Hunt all over James Conner. And then it's Conner. I still think Conner's a decent option with the role he's getting. I got Chargers and Vikings D. Who do you think? Yes, Chargers defense. Chargers defense is the number 1 defense, I think, this week. Let me pull up the defenses here. The Bears and the Chargers, both really good options. Pick 2, Tyreek, CD, and Kupp. Yeah, so like in spots like this, I think you just go Lamb and Kupp, and you don't need to risk it. You don't need to risk it. Don't risk it. I think it's probably worth risking it. Let's talk through this a little bit more, because I know that the Tyreek and Nico stuff is really tough, and it's similar. I think there's a better chance Nico plays than Tyreek, so the equation changes there a bit. But if you have guys like Khalil Shakir, Josh Downs, Deebo Samuel, Cooper Kupp, A.J. Brown, Devontae Adams, CeeDee Lamb, even George Pickens and Drake London and Terry McLaurin, I'd probably go all the way up to Tank Dell, then you probably just bench Tyreek. You don't need to risk it. You have other good receiver options that are definitely playing. But if you don't have one of those guys, you're thinking between him and Darnell Mooney or Devontae Smith or Calvin Ridley, Brian Thomas Jr., Roma Dunze, like that's where I probably risk it and just go with Tyreek. I do think he probably plays. Kyler or Mahomes and BPR. Nikki, how we doing all the way from Australia? Shout out to everybody in this live stream. Always very cool to hear we're reaching multiple continents on this live stream. But yeah, it's Kyler, I think, over Mahomes. Both are not the best options this week. Mahomes actually projects slightly better. I would go Kyler personally. I really don't want to start Mahomes at all. I was very in on Mahomes last week in a lot of my daily fantasy contests. He's first game over 20 points, back-to-back weeks over 19. He's starting to heat up a little bit, but those were really good matchups. Now against the Broncos, they ranked 5th best in points allowed to quarterbacks. They're huge favorites. I think they likely skew very run heavy in this game. I would go Kyler over Jared Goff. Blessings from Panama. Wow, thanks for tuning in from Panama as well on the TikTok live. We are live for week 10 here, guys, on TikTok and on YouTube. This is our 10th straight Sunday, and we got another 8 Sundays to go. It's going to be a fun week 10. A lot of good games on our TV screens coming up in about an hour and a half. A lot of big spreads this week. We got the Bills. They're 4.5-point favorites. I think they should probably be favored by more than that. The Jags are 7-point underdogs at home versus the Vikings. The Chiefs are 7.5-point favorites at home versus the Broncos. We got the 49ers, 6.5-point favorites in Tampa Bay. That feels like way too many points. I know they're coming off the bye, but the 49ers offense is not going to be stopped today. The Pats, They're 6.5-point underdogs in a game that has 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts, has the lowest over-under of the week. Neither offense is going to be able to throw the ball deep consistently in that game. Bears favored by 6.5, though. The Eagles are 7-point favorites. The Chargers are 8-point favorites. The Chargers get the Titans. The Eagles get the Cowboys. We're going to see Cooper Rush and Trey Lance today. We're going to see Mac Jones today, and we're going to see Mac Hollins for the Bills today, too, with all the receiver injuries for the Bills. So we got a couple Macs on our radar this week. Hey, Sam, current Walter Pick subscriber. Appreciate you, man. I'm sorry if I just didn't get to that question I pulled up on the YouTube live. We're going to get to as many starts as we can, though. We'll probably talk about the player that I just had up there. I think we'll go to Alvin. We'll go to you next. All right. Appreciate you doing the Walter Pick subscription, by the way. The best way you could possibly support Walter Picks is doing one of the premium subscriptions in the Walter Picks app. They're well worth the cost, whether you're into fantasy or props or both. But seriously, appreciate everyone that's done that. Make sure you join the Discord, too, if you're a Walter Pick subscriber. We got premium Discord channels. You can find the link to that in the YouTube description. Yeah, so D-Hop versus Ladd, I think that's pretty close. We got D-Hop 2 spots ahead of Ladd. I think I would go D-Hop over Ladd. Definitely a close call. And given the matchups, too, I don't think that's easy to decide. And then London, Downs, Tank, Shakir. Yes, Downs and Shakir. You got to start Downs and Shakir. I think London, obviously, is a good spot versus the Saints. Downs and Shakir are just projecting so well with the receiver injuries. No Pittman, no Amari Cooper, no Keon Coleman. I mean, the floors are just so high for these two guys, and they're playing in the same game. The matchup for Downs isn't quite as good as the matchup for Shakir. But, yeah, I think you go Downs and Shakir in basically all spots this week. Tyreek or Bucky, yeah, like that's the situation. Risk it. Go and try to risk it with Tyreek. I think it's likely he plays. More likely than not. There's a good chance he doesn't play, but I think it's more likely than not that he plays. So, yeah, I'm okay to risk that if I'm deciding between him and Bucky Irving. All right, let's pull this one up. This is probably worth it, Colby. Hopkins or Mooney, or should I play both and bench Tyreek? Yeah, this is like the line here, Billy, of like you could just play both these guys and bench Tyreek, and I think that's a fine decision to make. These are both decent options. I probably would play Mooney and maybe risk it with Tyreek. I think Hopkins and Mooney, they project really close together too. Yeah, we actually have Hopkins one spot ahead of Mooney. I think this is fine. This is right around that line. I said the line was Tank Dell. These two guys are right below Tank Dell. Maybe the line is actually Darnell Mooney right at the end of tier 4 as I have it in my tiers. I think you probably do just play both and bench Tyreek. Unless we suddenly get a report right before kickoff today, which is possible, that Tyreek's probably going to play, then I would probably bench one of these guys. Pearsall or Eckler, full PPR. It's Eckler over Pearsall for sure. Hill or Cook. Yeah, I'd go James Cook there. QB rankings, please. I got you. Got you the QB ranks. Mike Williams or Tolbert? I'd go Tolbert over Mike Will. It's hard to know exactly what the role is going to be for Mike Williams. Good morning, Alvin. Love to see you in the YouTube live. Again, appreciate your support, man. Mooney, McConkey, Brian Thomas Jr., pick one. Yeah, these guys are all bunched together this week. This is not an easy start-sit decision at all. I think there's arguments to be made for all of these guys. Brian Thomas Jr. is the matchup versus the Vikings. They've allowed the second most fantasy points per game to receivers this season. Brian Thomas Jr. is obviously balled this season, and he played through the injury last week and was one of his worst games of the season. Only 2 catches, 22 yards, but he played 90% of snaps. So he's going to be playing 90% plus of snaps in this game versus the Vikings. Massive ceiling. Mac and Cheese Mac Jones definitely muddies things a bit, but there's definitely reason to believe Mac Jones might be somewhat similar to what we saw for this offense with Trevor Lawrence. But then Mooney, he's been incredibly consistent. He's got a great matchup versus the Saints. I think he's probably the answer here. And McConkey's been great, but he's got a kind of difficult matchup versus the Titans in a game that could be really run heavy. No need to spam in the YouTube live comments. No need to spam in the TikTok live comments. We're going to get to as many start-sits as we can. All right. I would probably go Mooney, then McConkey, then Brian Thomas Jr. It's a scary week to bench Brian Thomas Jr. because I think the ceiling is just so high, but there's definitely a lot of uncertainty there. Hall, Mooney, Cup, London, pick one. Yeah, play Breece Hall. Play Breece Hall versus the Cardinals. I think he's a must start this week. Downs versus Breece Hall, I'd go Breece there. As much as I like Breece Hall, I mean, as much as I like Josh Downs. I got the DraftKings lineup up on the YouTube live. The other guy that I think is an interesting dart throw in tournaments on DraftKings this week is A.D. Mitchell, Adonai Mitchell, the rookie for the Colts. He's probably going to have a season-high career-high snap percentage this week with Pittman out. They're underdogs versus the Bills. I mean, the matchup on paper is not great, but A.D. Mitchell has been targeted at the fifth highest rate in the league on a per route basis. He just hasn't been out there very often. I think there's a sneaky ceiling here for A.D. Mitchell in tournaments this week. Tyreek or Josh Downs, yeah, I'm going Downs there. There's no reason to risk it with either Tyreek or Nico if you have Downs or Khalil Shakir. I'd go Dell over Juwan Jennings, though I do like Jennings and Pearsall this week. I think at least one of those guys probably outperforms expectation. I would play Eckler over both of them, I think, though, with Brian Robinson Jr. out. Najee or Nico, yeah, it's like if we talk about their line for running backs, Najee's probably right around that line in terms of risking it or not. I think it's more likely Nico plays than Tyreek. I think it's likely both play, though. I think you probably risk it with Nico over Najee. It's a close one, though. Najee's definitely a pretty safe option. He's been over 100 yards in 3 straight games. Man, the Giants are making the Panthers offensive line or defensive line look legitimate. The Giants are really going to lose this game. The Giants are right now, the live line, they're 7.5-point underdogs versus the Panthers. They're favored by 9 in this game. They're down 17-7. They're about to punt in Germany. Third quarter is coming to a close soon. Fortunately, Tyrone Tracy already cashed for us over 71.5 rushing yards. Feel great about that. And we got another 2 free player props today. Tajay Spears receiving yards and Taysom Hill receiving yards are the other 2 free player props that I'm on today. For flex, BTJ Puka. Yeah, play Puka over Stevenson. Play Puka over Brian Thomas Jr. Play Puka. He's a pretty good start. He's clearly healthy at this point. Downs over Jennings for sure. Start Khalil Shakir. Amari Cooper's out. Keon Coleman's out. It's a very good matchup. Is OBJ an option? Yeah. I mean, he's probably the option to try to swap out. I mean, it's not a good option, but he is a option. That's how I would put it. Not a good option, but he is a option. But ultimately, like, you're risking it. You're risking potentially 0 points by trusting Tyreek and Nico this week. And I think it's a worthwhile risk in a lot of spots. I'm playing Downs over D-Hop pretty easily. Mahomes or Darnold, I'd go Darnold there. Sam, how we doing, Ian? Sit 1, Terry, Thomas Jr., Moore, Downs. Yeah, you probably bench DJ Moore here. It's him or Brian Thomas Jr. I probably would bench DJ Moore. There's 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts projected in the Patriots-Bears game. That is not great. Happy football Sunday to you as well, Carson. We got Najee or Dobbins or Pollard, full PPR. Let's do this comparison on the YouTube Live. We do have Spears back this week. It's Najee, man. Yeah, it's Najee Harris. Dobbins has the better matchup of the group, but Gus Edwards is probably back. I think it's Najee there. Morning, Sam. Atlanta or Chargers defense this week? Yeah, so the Chargers rank as the number 1 defense this week. Let me pull up the defenses here. Pull up the defenses on the YouTube Live and the TikTok Live. So, yeah, the tier 1 defenses this week are the Bears and the Chargers. Again, the Bears are playing the Pats in the lowest over-under game of the week. Pats offense has been terrible. Their offensive line is maybe the worst in the NFL, and there's 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts in that game. The Pats, their rushing attack has been the least efficient rushing offense in the NFL over the last month. We were just looking at it earlier in the live stream, but Ramondre Stevenson has at his best yards per carry in the last month is 2.6 yards per carry. Antonio Gibson's been under 2 yards per carry each of the last 4 games. I mean, he had -1 rushing yards last week. Small sample size for Gibson, but they have not been able to run the ball at all. And they could struggle to throw the ball deep in this game with the wind. So, yeah, the Bears, the Chargers. I like the Vikings and the Lions. Defense is a decent amount, too. I liked the Giants in this Germany game. The Eagles, the Bills, the Chiefs. Those are the next defenses I would go with. I think the Pats are a sneaky defense, too, in that weather. Pollard, Downs, Dell, Adams, pick 2. Yes, you're playing Downs. This is really a pick 1. You got to start Downs. Pittman's out. Downs is almost like he arguably has one of the best chances over 30% target share of like all receivers He's already at like a 28% target share this season with Pittman. And they're underdogs in the game too. So you're not benching Downs here. It's probably Adams over Pollard. Yeah, it's Adams over Tank Dell too. You go in Adams. Switch back to the high level takes here. Puka or Downs? Yeah, I think it's Downs over Puka. That's a tough call to make. Similar, like Amon-Ra St. Brown versus Downs and Shakir. Like I think it's okay to go Amon-Ra there. I think it'd be okay to go Puka there too. But the Downs and Shakir, they do project better. And I think they probably are better options this week. Happy PR, Pollard or Dowdle? Yeah, I'd go Pollard still over Dowdle. Austin Eckler or Pitts? I'd go Eckler over Pitts. I don't want to start Pitts in the flex, man. No thanks. He's got a 0-point floor. The floor is way better for Eckler than for Pitts. Shakir or Cook, PPR? Yeah, this one's close, man. I think Shakir is probably a little bit safer. I think Cook is probably a little bit safer. Excuse me. I think that Shakir might have a better projection, though. Let's take a look here. No, it's James Cook. Yeah, James Cook's a really, really good option. I mean, he's got a really high floor and ceiling in this game. The Colts have not been a tough matchup. He's going to be more of an active in the receiving game with Amari Cooper and Keon Coleman out. And he should get plenty of rushing opportunity, too. Decent chance at a touchdown in this game. He had 5 catches last week, 111 rushing yards the week before that. We've seen the ceiling. The floor has been there for most of the season for Cook, too. He's not really game script dependent because he's a capable receiving back. Hunter Henry, Pierce, or Hollins. Yeah, this one's Henry, man. I'm not playing Mac Daddy Hollins. No, thanks. I think, is this probably Alec Pierce? I was thinking Damian Pierce. Alec Pierce is an interesting name to consider in this one. Let's compare him to Hunter Henry. We'll get Mac Daddy Hollins in this too. Yeah, it's Henry. It's Henry. I mean, Pierce and Hollins are actually similar. I'm going Taysom over Henry easily. Pull up the tight end ranks here again. Taysom's a great option this week. I mean, he's the top of tier 4 for me. I'd play Kincaid, McBride, Don Kelsey, and Kittle over him. And then it's Taysom, man. Taysom Hill is the second best weapon on Saints today. I mean, it's Kamara and then it's Taysom. Taysom's got a great chance at a touchdown. Taysom had 9 touches last week. He had 5 targets and 5 carries. I think Nico and Tyreek play. I'm seeing a lot of comments asking about Nico. I think in situations like this, Cody, where you're thinking between Nico, Ladd, and BTJ, it's probably worth risking it and going with Nico. I think it's more likely than not he plays. But it is obviously a risk. Obviously, we know Brian Thomas Jr. and Ladd are going to play. I think the line for me is Darnell Mooney. If I go to the wide receiver tiers here, quick, I'll pull up the wide receiver ranks on the YouTube live. I think they're already up. Yeah. I would play, and McConkey's right on that line. I would play Nico and Tyreek over Devontae Smith, over Ladd McConkey, over Calvin Ridley, over Cortland Sutton. I think it's likely they play. I'm willing to take the risk with Brian Thomas Jr., Roma Dunze, Keenan Allen, Juwan Jennings, Marvin Harrison Jr. Like, I'm willing to risk it if those are the guys I'm thinking about. But if I have Darnell Mooney or DeAndre Hopkins or Tank Dell or Terry McLaurin or Drake London or George Pickens or CeeDee Lamb, then I'm not risking it. I'm just going to start the good option I have. And this is right at that line, Cody. So you got to make the call yourself how much risk you want to take. I think Nico probably plays, though. So I think it's probably a worthwhile risk in most spots. Lamb, Downs, or Shakir. Yeah, I'm benching Lamb for Downs and Shakir this week. I would, at least. I think there's obviously some uncertainty with Cooper Rush starting and Lamb's playing through an injury. Sit 1, Debo, Downs, or Dobbins. Probably Dobbins here is the guy to sit. Debo's got a really high ceiling without IU in the lineup anymore. Obviously, Pearsall and Jennings, they're healthy. They're going to mix in too. Will be interesting to see how that shakes out. But yeah, it's Debo and Downs here. I think I would play Downs over Monty in the flex. Yeah. Already have Jonathan Taylor. I don't really mind starting JT and Downs. JT and Downs are probably going to combine for a huge portion of the Colts offense today. Shepard or McMillan? I'd go McMillan over Shepard. Jennings or Pickens? Definitely Pickens. Aaron Jones or Kittle? Oh, man. It's probably Aaron Jones. Kittle is the number 1 tight end this week. I mean, Kittle is a must start. I don't know how you're thinking about Kittle in the flex because he needs to be started over every single tight end. I mean, the Bucs have been absolutely crushed by tight ends this season. George Kittle is the number 1 tight end this season by far. It's not that close. He's averaging 18 points per game, and he gets a Bucs defense that's been obliterated by tight ends this season. Kittle versus Aaron Jones, though, is probably close. I do like Aaron Jones a lot this week, too. Yeah, it's Aaron Jones just by a smidge over Kittle. We got him 0.1 points higher. I probably would go Aaron Jones over Kittle if I had to decide. Knicks or Stroud, Bucky or Javonte. Yes, so you can't start Javonte this week. Guys, there's no starting Javonte. I think Javonte might project a bit better. You can't start him versus the Chiefs. You can't do it. There's a question about. There's been some rumors that they want to get Audric Estime more involved, but every single running back has been just stomped by the Chiefs defense. There's been not a single ceiling game versus the Chiefs. Like the ceiling for Javonte is like 12.5 points, and that would be like a good outcome. That's what Kamara had versus the Chiefs. So yeah, I'm definitely very, very nervous about Javonte. I do not think he's a good start, and I would go Bucky over him. And I think Stroud over Knicks makes sense this week too. Let's go to the receiver ranks here. I think I would probably go, ETN versus Ray Davis and McMillan. Oh gosh, McMillan maybe over ETN. ETN versus Ray Davis is gross decision to have to make. I mean, don't feel good about either of those. Let's see here. It's probably McMillan. He doesn't project that great. Man, ETN. It's ETN. It's ETN over McMillan and Ray Davis. I think that's probably right. Daniel Jones starting to heat up a little bit. Malik Neighbors gets hurt. Not great. Ladd or Shakir, it's Shakir. Shakir is a must start this week for sure. Dobbins, Hunt, Shakir. Yeah, I'd bench Dobbins there. Dell is going to play. Dell is confirmed playing. Shakir or wait for Tyreek Hill to clear. So the two unconfirmed, the big two unconfirmed guys, it's Nico Collins and it's Tyreek Hill. My current thinking on this is I think it's like 70% chance Nico plays. I lean towards him playing. I think it's like 51% chance that Tyreek plays. I lean towards him playing, but I think it's a little closer. I think they're both worth the risk in certain spots. But if you have Shakir or you have Josh Downs, like just start those guys. Shakir projects better than Tyreek just already. I mean, he projects so well with Amari and Keon Coleman out. I think Shakir is a must start in basically all spots. But yeah, I mean, it's a tough call. Like Tyreek or Sutton, I'm risking it. And I'm hoping Tyreek plays. I think, again, it's likely that they play. Tua or Baker. Yeah, I think it's Tua over Baker this week. Brian Thomas Jr. or Jalen Waddle. I think Jalen Waddle is a very interesting sleeper this week. And yeah, he's a sleeper. He's been under 10 points every single game since week one. People have completely lost faith in Jalen Waddle. I have not lost complete faith in Waddle. I mean, I don't think you just go from being a very talented receiver to just suddenly not being a very talented receiver. I still think he is one of the more talented receivers in the NFL. There's a chance Tyreek doesn't play. Even if Tyreek plays, you got to think he's somewhat limited if there's a true question mark he's even going to play. And that points to maybe a big Waddle game. Like Waddle versus Brian Thomas Jr., I think is extremely close. I really do. Brian Thomas Jr., I want to start him versus the Vikings. The Vikings have allowed the second most fantasy points per game to receivers this season. If Brian Thomas Jr. is able to get some accurate targets in this game, he could completely smash. He could have his best game of the season. We've seen some massive performances. This is the best talent Mac Jones has ever played with. Mac and Cheese Mac Jones has never been surrounded by this much talent. The offensive line's not great, but the offensive line was awful in New England. The receiver room's certainly better. I mean, Gabe Davis might have been the best receiver that Mac Jones had in New England. And obviously, Brian Thomas Jr. would be. And then you got Evan Ingram as well. I mean, the running back situation is not terrible. Here's a close call here. Yeah, and again, I think I lean towards Tyreek playing. So I think I lean still towards Brian Thomas Jr. here, but it's close. And I do want to highlight, I think Waddle's a good option this week and a good sleeper. And someone I expect to bounce back versus expectation. Thanks for the Discord help. I got you. Yeah, you guys, if you're not in the Discord, it's a free Discord. The link is in the YouTube description. If you're watching live on TikTok, the link to the YouTube is in the TikTok bio. So you go to the TikTok bio, you two presses your finger away from the YouTube live, and then you two presses of your finger away from the Discord. And we also have premium Discord channels for everyone that has a Walter Pick subscription. Shout out to all the Walter Pick subscribers out there. You're not seeing any of the Bengals or Ravens players because these are rankings for the rest of the week. And obviously they already played. We had Jamar as wide receiver 1 in our rankings on Thursday night. Start 1, Happy PR, Mooney, Stevenson, or Taysom. I'm already starting London. Yeah, go London in Mooney. I think that's a pretty high floor play. I would go Mooney pretty easily over Taysom. I think Mooney over Mondre makes sense too. Mondre might project slightly better. No. Yeah, it's Mooney over Mondre. It's Mooney over Taysom as well. Tank Bigsby or Ray Davis? Yeah, I'd go Bigsby there. Is Nico playing? He has not confirmed playing, but I do think he will play. QB rankings, I got you. I'll go to running backs next. Yeah, so Tyreek is also questionable. Tyreek and Nico are questionable. Keenan Allen or Juwan Jennings, Eckler or Dobbins? I think I'd go Juwan Jennings over Keenan. With the weather report in that Bears game, I don't want to start Keenan like at all. I think Jennings has a much higher ceiling, honestly, than Keenan does. And then Eckler or Dobbins, I think it's Dobbins over Eckler. Eckler was in a 3-way timeshare last week. I would play Shakir and Josh Downs very easily over Tyreek and Nico. Will Jay Jettis go over 100 yards? Probably. I mean, history says he probably would. I don't know what the injury there was for Neighbors, but that did not look great. Maybe a concussion. Anyone listening to the broadcast, let me know what they're saying that injury was for Neighbors. Yeah, I'd go Shakir over Tyreek. Jennings or Tyreek Hill. Yeah, that's a situation where I would risk it with Tyreek. McConkey or Hill PPR, take the chance on Hill playing. Yeah, this is right at that line. It's right at that Darnell Mooney, Lad McConkey line that I think it probably is worth the risk to hope that Tyreek plays. He has a history of playing through injury. He is a true question mark, and you're probably just not going to know before you have to make this start-sit decision. I think this is right at the line where I would lean Tyreek. Hit that follow button, guys, if you're watching live on TikTok. I will not see your comment unless you're following with how the live stream works. Ridley or Jennings? Yeah, just Ridley over Jennings. For sure, it's Ridley over Jennings. Collins or London? Yeah, I would just go with London. If you have a good option, just go with that option over Nico and Tyreek this week. If you have Darnell Mooney, DeAndre Hopkins, Tank Dell, Terry McLaurin, Drake London, George Pickens, CeeDee Lamb, Devontae Adams, AJ Brown, Cooper Kupp, Deebo Samuel. If you have Josh Downs or Khalil Shakir, like just bench Tyreek, just bench Nico. Because all those guys are good options and we know they're playing. Hey, Sam, James Conner or Kareem Hunt? Yeah, I think we talked about this one earlier in the live too. I would go Kareem Hunt here. I think James Conner ranks a bit higher in my original rankings that I put together for this live, but I bumped James Conner down a little bit as we talked through the finger injury that I think could impact his receiving role a bit this week, which I don't like. I would play McCaffrey, Swift, Gibbs, Hunt, and Najee, I think, all over James Conner this week. Then it's Conner. Thanks, John, for doing the TikTok live subscription. Appreciate that, man. We're going to get to the TikTok live subscriber only comment mode here coming up soon. Terry Downs or Puka? Yeah, it's Downs. And Puka. Start Downs, start Puka for sure. I'd probably go Ridley over Waddle, and I'd probably go Waddle over Sutton. Waddle is a sneaky good option this week, and Sutton's in a pretty scary matchup. Looks like Neighbors is back out there. Is this trade fair? Terry and D-Hop for Garrett Wilson. Yeah, that's a fair trade. Fair trade. I could see a story where both sides benefit from that. Another Tracy touchdown would be massive for the Tracy bags. Addison or McMillan or Connor or Hunt if we got to that one. Lamb or Downs. Yeah, I'm going Downs over Lamb. It feels gross, but I think that makes sense. I'm going Downs over Kupp and Deebo too. I don't think it's crazy, to start some of these elite options over Downs and Shakir, but Shakir and Downs are elite options this week. They are. Without Michael Pittman Jr., without Amari Cooper and Keon Coleman. Kyle Pitts is my only tight end. Yeah, so I mean, you signed up for the Kyle Pitts experience. You got to try them out there. But yeah, there's a lot of tight ends I'd play over Kyle Pitts. Let me go to the tight end ranks here. Seeing some tight end questions. I'd play Kittle, Kelsey, Otten over him very easily. Daniel Jones gets in for a rushing touchdown. Big for the Daniel Jones fantasy start there. And we got a game here in Germany. I think it's going to be a 3-point game now? Is Tyreek going to play? I think so, but it's a true question mark that we won't know about. So yeah, I'm playing Hawkinson, Henry, Ferguson, Ingram, Hill, Taysom Hill, Kincaid, McBride, Otten, Kelsey, Kittle, all over Pitts this week, which is part of the reason I think he's a must bench. Walter picks OG here. Shout out to you, Sam. All the OGs, all the new people tuning in for the first time. Shout out to everyone. Brown, Downs, Pickens, Hunt, bench 1. Yeah, you probably bench Pickens or Hunt here. Let's do Pickens versus Hunt. I like Pickens this week versus the Commanders. I like Pickens with Russ, man. I think Pickens has an extremely high ceiling. I still think he's one of the more underrated receivers just in general. Hunt's in a good matchup, though, here versus the Broncos. He had 27 carries last game. He definitely has a safer floor. I assume you mean, when you say Brown, you mean A.J. Brown here, too. I think I'd probably bench Pickens here. I think the other guys just have a better floor and ceiling combo. Sam, do I risk playing Ricky over Tyreek or no? Yes, I think no. Connie, I think no. And some of this does have to do with your individual situation in your individual matchup, right? Like I think if you started Jamar Chase on Thursday night, or maybe you had Joe Burrow or Lamar Jackson, and you have a huge lead, then I think I am more inclined to go with Ricky Pearsall over Tyreek because he's a true game time decision that we won't know about till tomorrow night. But if it's a close matchup or you're losing in the matchup, like you got to risk it. Sometimes you got to take on some risk in life to get potential big rewards. And I think that's what it is with Tyreek and Nico this week. I think Nico's a little bit safer than Tyreek in my mind. This is all sort of speculation in my sort of sense of things. I have no information that you do not have when it comes to these injuries. But yeah, I think he's worth the risk here. Like, unless you have like Darnell Mooney, show wide receiver ranks here. Yeah, I got you. Unless you have Darnell Mooney or DeAndre Hopkins or Tank Dell or Terry McLaurin or Drake London or George Pickens, then I think it's probably not worth the risk in most spots because you have a good option already that is playing. Pearsall is just a upside play though. He's not a safe option by any means. I do think he's an interesting ceiling. He is playing in my DraftKings lineup this week. I'm going with the Purdy, Pearsall, Juwan Jennings stack. Pearsall or Eckler for flex full PPR. Yeah, Eckler's definitely safer here with Brian Robinson Jr. out. Pearsall, I think, arguably has a higher ceiling, though, a little bit more of an unknown ceiling. But it's Eckler. Yeah, it's got to be Eckler here. Is Kirk a good start? Not a terrible start. I don't hate Kirk. I think I would go Baker over Goff, even in a tough matchup for Baker. Baker ranks number 2 in fantasy points per game this season. Kincaid or Otton? Yeah, it's Otton over Kincaid. Hollins or Adonai Mitchell? Yeah, I'm going Adonai Mitchell, man. I think Adonai Mitchell is a very good sleeper this week. He's probably going to set career highs in snap percentage in routes run this week. We have only seen one game this season where Adonai Mitchell had more than 2 targets, and he had 9 points in that game. He had 7 targets in that one, 4 catches, 38 yards, and 4 rushing yards as well. We have not seen Adonai Mitchell play more than half the snaps since week 2. And those were, Anthony Richardson games. And Adonai Mitchell ranks 5th in target per route run rate this season. He's been targeted when he's on routes run. He's been targeted on over 35% of his routes run. Adonai Mitchell, that's 5th highest in the NFL. He just hasn't ran that many routes. Yeah, I think Adonai Mitchell has actually a pretty exciting ceiling, a pretty interesting sleeper. I think a pretty interesting option in tournaments this week too. Hey, Sam, should I trade away Saquon for Garrett Wilson, Chase Brown, and Jaden Reed? I have Breece and Kyren already. And I have DJ Moore's wide receiver 1. Yeah, it's a fair trade. I don't hate it. I mean, you're getting a pretty good haul. Chase Brown, obviously, going to be a good PPR option. You're giving up the best player in the trade, but Garrett Wilson's been balling too, man. And I don't love starting Garrett Wilson and Breece necessarily, but it's a fair trade. I'd be fine doing that one. Pollard or Stevenson? Yeah, it's probably Pollard. Spears is back, but Stevenson's been so inefficient. He's been fine for fantasy because he's been scoring. Yeah, back-to-back weeks over 22 points. Neither of these guys are in great matchups. I think it's probably Pollard though over Ramondre. Downs or CMC? Oh gosh, it's so tough to bench Christian McCaffrey. I think it is Downs over CMC though. Connor or McConkey? That one's pretty close too. I think it's Connor over McConkey, given their respective matchups. Yeah, it's Connor over McConkey. Zay Flowers isn't on here. These are the rest of the week projections here. Shout out to everybody in this live stream right now. If you are on TikTok, hit the follow button. I will not see your comment unless you are following. If you're watching live on YouTube, guys, smash the like button, hit the subscribe button. I do appreciate it. Breece Hall, Devontae Smith, or Jonathan Taylor. We are grinding through start sits for the rest of this live stream. We're grinding through the start sits. We're still going to get to dozens of start sit questions. And if I don't get to your start sit question, you got to download the Walter Picks app. It is the best app for fantasy advice. You can get infinite start sit decisions answered there. You can get player prop insights. They're the best way you can possibly support me. And if you use code SAM when you sign up, you will get a free 7-day trial to all the premium subscriptions in the app too. So these are really good options. Breece Hall, Devontae Smith, Jonathan Taylor. This really comes down to Breece Hall and Jonathan Taylor, though. I'm playing Breece Hall and Jonathan Taylor easily over Devontae Smith. I mean, both these guys are elite options. JT, though, I think is probably a bit better than Brees. And they're both like really, really close. I got them both in the same tier. They're both tier 2 backs for me, both projected over 17 points. Brees Hall is in an incredible role, but Jonathan Taylor is too. And JT gets the Bills. The Cardinals are a good matchup for Brees, but the Bills, man, I mean, they've allowed so many catches to the running backs. They rank dead last. They were allowing the most receptions per game to running backs, 7.6 receptions per game, 61 receiving yards per game. And they're allowing wide receiver numbers to the running backs. And it's partially just like the scheme and the style of defense they're playing. So JT should have a pretty big receiving role today and a big rushing role, obviously, as well. I think I'd lean JT. And that game is projected to be close, only 4.5 point spread in that game. So definitely a close one. Henry or Taysom, I'd go Taysom over Henry for sure. Is Nico playing? I think he will play, but he is not confirmed playing. Him and Tyreek are not confirmed playing. Cousins or Stroud? Yeah, I think I lean towards switch to the quarterback ranks here. I think that one's close. I think I lean towards Cousins. Yeah, it's Cousins over Stroud for me. It's definitely really close. It's a close call. Yeah, both these games should be high scoring, though. I think it's Cousins. I think Nico plays. I think Lamb will be okay without Dak, yeah. He probably will be a little bit worse. He could be just as good, though. Wouldn't be that crazy, depending on what we see from Cooper Rush. Addison or McMillan? Yeah, I lean towards McMillan over Addison. Shakir or Dell? It's Shakir, man. You got to start Shakir. Oh, my God. Almost interception to a big catch for the Giants. What's up, Sam? Bucky or JMO? Yeah, it's Bucky over Jameson. You can't start Jameson Williams. Najee or Kareem Hunt? I think it's Hunt over Najee. Why bench Pitts? Because he is close to a 0-point floor. The floor is just not there for Pitts. I mean, the ceiling's there. But there's just so many tight ends I prefer over Pitts. And so many tight ends that I prefer that are probably available in your league, like Taysom Hill, like Hunter Henry. I play both those guys. I play Hawkinson, Ferguson, Evan Ingram, Kincaid, all these guys I'd play over Pitts, and therefore I think he's a bench. In most leagues, he's a bench. Sam, you skipped my question. I got you. D-Hop or DeJuan Jennings in the flex, and Stevenson or Bucky at running back? Yeah, it's D-Hop over Jennings for sure. And then Stevenson or Bucky at Stevenson. It's Stevenson over Bucky. Bucky is not the best start this week. He really isn't, with Rachaad White playing more snaps than him and taking a lot of the receiving work. And Mondre back-to-back games over 20 points. There's a story there for Mondre, despite the inefficiency. London or Pickens or Collins or Dell. Yeah, this is a tough call. And this is one of these, like, you just don't need to force it with Nico Collins. And you actually have Tank Dell too. Like in this spot, maybe you do just risk it with Nico Collins. Then if he doesn't play, just play Tank Dell. Like that's actually probably the path here. I asked you earlier this week and you said London or Mooney. Yeah, it's London. It's London over Mooney. I think it's close, but it's London. Bo Nix or Mahomes? Yeah, I'd probably go Mahomes over Bo Nix. I do not want to start Bo Nix at all. Tyreek or Pickens? I would just go with Pickens there. Pollard, Ridley, or Brian Thomas Jr. or Otten, PPR. Pick 2. Yeah, I think Ridley versus Brian Thomas Jr. is definitely a close call. Oh, man, that was a really bad interception. Pollard, Ridley. You got Ridley ahead of Brian Thomas Jr. Let's compare these guys. Take Brian Thomas Jr. out of this for a second. Let's get Otten in here because he projects pretty well. Wow, yeah, it's Otten. Man, Otten's been in such a good role. I did not think a tight end would beat these guys out. And Brian Thomas Jr. has the highest ceiling of all these guys. I think Ridley's got a sneaky high ceiling too. I think it's Otten and Ridley, though. Going back to this, Pollard versus Ridley, it's close. The Titans are 8-point underdogs, though. I think it's probably Ridley and Otten, or Brian Thomas Jr. and Otten is what I would do here. You would play Downs over Adams and Nico according to this list? Yeah, I would. I'm not benching Downs or Shakir with Pittman and Amari and Keon Coleman out. I think they have really good floor and ceiling this week. I mean, Nico, I definitely would play Downs over Nico just because there's some risk Nico doesn't play. Same thing with Tyreek. I think it's reasonable to bench Downs for Amon-Ra and for Puka and Debo and Kupp and Brown and Adams and Lamb. Some of these elite guys you drafted early. It's okay to start these guys over Downs. So they're all projected pretty close. But Downs is the better option. Like Downs has a really good chance at a 30+% target share in a game where they are trailing. All right, let's go to the QBs here, seeing a request for that. Switch over to the wide receivers here on the YouTube Live. We are over 3 hours in. The Germany time game's almost over. Man, these live streams fly by, man. I appreciate everyone who's tuned in to this live stream right now, who's tuned in for maybe multiple hours since this live stream started. We're starting Taysom Hill this week. It is another Taysom week. The receiver room for the Saints is an absolute joke. It's one of the worst receiver rooms of all time. Of all time. We got Mason Tipton, Marcus Valdes-Scantling, someone named Kevin Austin Jr. and Jermaine Jackson for the Saints today, and then Dante Pettis. I mean, crazy. It's really Taysom, Juwan Johnson, Alvin Kamara, and then Mason Tipton. Pickens, Shakir, Downs, pick 2. Yeah, you bench Pickens there. You play Shakir and Downs. McBride or Ridley, Mostert or Javonte, non-PPR. Oof. It's probably Mostert over Javonte, I think. I'd go Mostert over Javonte. I don't really want to start either of those guys, but I think I would go Mostert over Javonte. I think I'd probably go Ridley over McBride. Let's do this comparison, though. I bet McBride projects a bit better. We just saw Otten project a bit better. McBride's right behind Otten. Man, it's McBride. It's McBride over Ridley. I still think Ridley's ceiling's probably a little bit higher. That's exactly what this shows, but the floor is better for McBride, so you got to decide. You want to lock in at least 10? McBride's giving you a much better chance of that. You want to have a chance at 30+? Ridley's definitely giving you a better chance at 30+ than McBride. Hey, man, what 2 should I start? Monty, Mixon, or Achane? And for the one you won't start, would you flex them over Mooney? Yeah, Mixon and Achane. Play Mixon and Achane over Mooney, for sure. You got to flex. You got to start Achane, and you got to start Mixon. There's no benching either of those guys. Cup or McLaurin, I'd lean Cup. Taysom or Jennings, I'd lean Taysom, I think, there. I do think Juwan Jennings has a pretty intriguing ceiling. So drop Bigsby and pick up McMillan. Max, it's not a terrible move. It's a pretty lateral move, I would say. If you need receivers, I think McMillan does have an intriguing ceiling. Taysom, Brian Thomas Jr., or Sutton. Yeah, I'd probably go Brian Thomas Jr. here over Taysom and over Sutton. Sam, please help me. Sit 2, full PPR. Marvin Harrison Jr., DJ Moore, Taysom, Sutton. Yeah, bench DJ Moore. And I think bench Sutton. I think Sutton projects better than Marv. Let's check this one out. DJ Moore with a wind. I do like Taysom this week. Let's do Taysom versus Sutton. I definitely bench DJ Moore here. And then Marv. Yeah, I think you might want to bench Marv and DJ. I think you bench Marv and DJ and you play. I don't feel great about Sutton with the matchup, but I mean, Marv has a tough matchup too. So yeah, I think you bench Marv and you bench DJ Moore. Kyron Williams or Pollard? Yeah, it's Kyron. There's no bench of Kyron. Warren or Algier? I'd probably go Algier there. Ridley or Waddle? I think I lean Ridley here. I do like Waddle this week though. Bless you. Thank you. All right. Tank Dell or Marvin? Yeah, I'd lean Tank there. I like Waddle as a sleeper this week because there's a chance Tyreek doesn't go, and I think this is a good bounce back game for Waddle in the matchup. Bless you. Thank you. Appreciate that. Ingram versus Pitts. Yeah, it's Ingram. Let me go to the tight ends here. Let me get to the person who blessed me. Monty, Mooney, or Jameson at flex. Yeah, I think this one's Mooney, then Monty, then Jameson. Bless you, gang. Appreciate that, Max. Hey, Sam, help. Sit 1. Swift, Gibbs, Hall, or CMC non-PPR? Yeah, in non-PPR, you probably sit Gibbs here. I think you probably sit Gibbs. Then I'd go Tua over Stroud this week. Swift, Gibbs, Hall. So yeah, we just talked about this one. Guys on the YouTube, that's my time. Thank you so much for tuning in. Time is the most valuable thing we have. Thanks for spending some time with me tonight. Good luck, everyone, in Week 10. We'll be back live next week for the Thursday night and Sunday morning lives. And make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the content we're posting all week. Have a good one, guys, and good luck, everyone. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the future lives.